The scent of silver and death hit Luna Nightshade's nostrils the moment she stepped onto the glass-walled balcony of the Nightshade Tower. 30 floors below, downtown Seattle glittered like scattered diamonds, but tonight the city's supernatural heartbeat thrummed with terror. Her enhanced hearing picked up the distant howls, not the controlled communications of pack wolves, but the wild, desperate cries of shifters losing their humanity. "The ferals are multiplying," she whispered, her words fogging the November air as her bones began their familiar ache. Above, the blood moon emerged from its cloudy shroud like a crimson eye opening in the darkness, and Luna's human form rippled with the first tremors of an unwanted transformation. She gripped the steel railing, her knuckles white as her claws extended involuntarily. The metal groaned under her supernatural strength, leaving deep gouges that would be impossible to explain to the building's human maintenance staff. Behind her, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the emergency board meeting erupted in chaos. Her pack's corporate leaders, million-dollar suits hiding ancient predators, argued over territorial maps, and casualty reports spread across the mahogany conference table. 3 packs destroyed in 1 week. Dozens of shifters found in various stages of feral transformation, their minds gone, their wolf sides consuming everything human within them. The supernatural world was hemorrhaging control, and humans were starting to notice. Luna's phone buzzed with an encrypted message that made her stomach drop. Emergency protocol crimson. Report to the binding chamber immediately. Elder Ravencrest. The binding chamber hadn't been used in over a century. Whatever was happening tonight would change everything. She could taste it in the air like copper pennies and ozone, like the metallic tang that preceded lightning strikes. As she turned to leave, her reflection caught in the window. Amber eyes now glowing with inner fire, canine teeth extending past her lower lip and along her collarbone, the birthmark that marked her as Crimson-born, a crescent moon surrounded by ancient symbols that seemed to pulse with their own otherworldly rhythm. She didn't know that across the city, in a converted warehouse in the industrial district, Kieran Blackthorne was experiencing the same unwanted transformation, or that their destinies were about to collide in the most dangerous way possible. Luna's heels clicked against the marble floors as she navigated the executive levels of Nightshade Enterprises. The building served as both corporate headquarters and pack stronghold, its modern glass facade hiding reinforced steel walls, silver-lined security systems, and enough supernatural protections to withstand an army. Tonight, those protections felt inadequate. The private elevator descended past the public floors, past the secure corporate levels, down into the ancient heart of the building where old magic still thrummed in the reinforced concrete walls. The binding chamber existed in the deepest sub-basement, a circular room carved from Pacific Northwest granite and lined with silver inlay that formed complex protective patterns. Elder Ravencrest waited for her inside, his silver hair gleaming under the chamber's mystical lighting. At 78, he was the oldest member of their pack, his weathered face carrying the wisdom of decades spent navigating supernatural politics. Tonight, he looked every one of his years. "Luna." His voice carried the formal tones reserved for pack ceremonies. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "What's happening, Elder? The blood moon shouldn't be affecting me this strongly. It's not even at full phase yet." She crossed her arms, trying to suppress another tremor of unwanted transformation. "That's precisely why you're here." He gestured to an ancient leather tome spread open on the chamber's central altar. "We've discovered why the feral plague is spreading, and I'm afraid the solution involves you directly." Luna approached the altar, her enhanced vision easily reading the archaic text despite the dim lighting. The pages were illuminated with gold leaf and crimson ink, depicting werewolves in various stages of transformation, mystical symbols she didn't recognize, and what looked like prophecies written in the old tongue. "The Crimson Prophecy," she breathed, recognizing fragments from her childhood education. "But that's just legend. Stories told to young cubs about the old days." "I'm afraid it's quite real." Elder Ravencrest turned the page, revealing an illustration that made Luna's breath catch. 2 wolves, one silver white and one midnight black, stood beneath a blood moon with their essences intertwined by golden light. Around them, Other wolves transformed from feral beasts back into their human forms. The prophecy speaks of a crimson-born who will unite with her destined mate to heal the supernatural world's greatest crisis. Destined mate. Luna's voice cracked slightly. She'd never shown interest in the traditional mating customs, preferring to focus on her corporate responsibilities and pack leadership training. Elder, you know I'm not ready for. Ready or not, the signs are undeniable. He pointed to another passage. The feral plague, the blood moon's early rising, your increased transformation sensitivity, it's all connected. And Luna, there's something else. Something that will be difficult to accept. The heavy chamber door groaned open, and Luna spun toward the sound, her senses immediately overwhelmed by a scent that made her knees weak and her heart race. Pine and leather, winter storms and wild honey, with an underlying musk that spoke to the deepest parts of her wolf nature. Her mate recognition instincts, dormant for 28 years, roared to life with painful intensity. The man who entered should have been impossible. Dark hair that looked like it had been finger-combed by wind, green eyes that held forests and secrets, broad shoulders that spoke of physical labor rather than corporate boardrooms. He moved with the controlled grace of a predator, but something in his posture suggested wariness, as if he expected an attack at any moment. Luna Nightshade, Elder Ravencrest said formally. Meet Kieran Blackthorne. The surname hit her like a physical blow. Blackthorne. The pack that had murdered her parents when she was 8 years old. The enemies who had torn apart her childhood and left her an orphan raised by her father's beta and her mother's sister. She took an involuntary step backward, her claws extending fully as rage and betrayal warred with the impossible attraction singing through her veins. You brought him here? Her voice dropped to a dangerous growl. A blackthorn in our sacred chamber? Luna, please, Elder Ravencrest began.
No.
She whirled to face the elder, her amber eyes blazing. This is insane. The Blackthorn pack destroyed my family. There are sworn enemies. Whatever game you're playing, it's not a game. Kieran's voice was deep, rough, carrying an accent that suggested years spent away from pack territory. I didn't come here by choice. But the feral plague is spreading to human populations, and if we don't act soon, there won't be a supernatural world left to protect. Luna forced herself to really look at him, pushing past the scent-drunk haze of mate recognition. His clothes were practical rather than expensive, worn leather jacket, dark jeans, combat boots that had seen actual combat. His hands bore scars that spoke of manual labor and violence. This wasn't the pampered heir of a pack dynasty. This was someone who had lived hard and fought harder. You're not with your pack, she realized. Haven't been for 12 years. His green eyes met hers steadily. I was exiled when I refused to participate in their expansion wars. I've been hunting rogues and ferals ever since, trying to make amends for what my family did. Making amends? Luna's voice rose. Your father ordered my parents' execution. Your pack burned our ancestral lands. You think hunting a few rogues balances those scales? No, he said quietly. Nothing balances those scales. But I'm trying anyway. Elder Ravencrest cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to the prophecy book. Your personal history is precisely why this is so difficult. But the prophecy is clear. Only the union of light and shadow, of the crimson-born and the exiled heir, can restore balance to our world. Luna stared at the illustrations again, her heart pounding as she recognized the truth she didn't want to accept. The silver-white wolf in the image bore the same crescent moon markings she carried. The midnight black wolf had the same unusual silver markings she could see along Kieran's collarbone, where his jacket fell open. This is impossible, she whispered. And yet, Kieran said, his voice gentle despite the tension crackling between them, you felt it the moment I walked in. The recognition. The pull. Your wolf knows mine, just like mine knows yours. Luna wrapped her arms around herself, trying to contain the riot of conflicting emotions. Her rational mind screamed that this was a trap, a blackthorn manipulation designed to infiltrate and destroy her pack. But her supernatural senses told a different story. The mate bond hummed between them like a live wire, undeniable and growing stronger with each passing moment. "There's something else," Elder Ravencrest said gently. "The prophecy gives you 3 blood moon cycles to complete your bond. If you fail, the feral plague becomes permanent," Kieran finished. "Every shifter in the world eventually loses their humanity. The supernatural realm collapses into chaos, and humans discover our existence in the worst possible way." Luna closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choice settling on her shoulders. Accept the mate bond with her family's killer, or watch the world she'd sworn to protect burn to ash. When she opened them again, both men were watching her with identical expressions of hope and dread. 3 months, she said finally. 3 blood moon cycles. 3 months, Kieran confirmed. Luna looked at the prophecy one more time, memorizing the images of healing and transformation. "Then we'd better get started." Kieran Blackthorne stood in the ruins of what had once been the Crescent Falls Pack territory, his enhanced vision cutting through the pre-dawn darkness to survey the devastation. Scorched earth stretched for acres, punctuated by the skeletal remains of what had been a thriving pack community just 72 hours ago. The scent of death and feral musk still clung to the November air, mixed with the acrid smell of buildings burned by supernatural fire. This was the 4th pack destroyed in 2 weeks. He crouched beside a massive paw print pressed into the muddy ground, running his fingers along the edges. Too large for a normal werewolf, with claw marks that suggested uncontrolled transformation. The feral who had made this track was far gone, its human consciousness completely consumed by its wolf nature. "Kieran." The voice behind him belonged to Detective Sarah Chin, one of the few humans who knew about the supernatural world. Her position with Seattle PD's Special Investigations Unit made her invaluable for keeping supernatural incidents out of the public eye. "We've got a problem." He stood, turning to face the petite woman whose tough exterior hid a sharp mind and unshakable courage. "More witnesses?" 3 hikers found the remains yesterday evening. They posted photos to social media before we could contain the situation. Sarah held up her phone, showing him blurry images of massive wolf tracks and claw marks scored into tree trunks. #Bigfoot Seattle is trending. How many views? 50,000 and climbing. We've got cryptid hunters driving up from Portland, and someone called in a tip to that supernatural investigation show on cable. Sarah ran a hand through her short black hair. "We can dismiss individual sightings, but this many incidents, people are starting to connect the dots." Kieran's jaw tightened. The supernatural world had survived for centuries by maintaining careful secrecy, hiding in plain sight while humans dismissed wolf sightings as dogs or coyotes. But the feral plague was creating evidence too obvious to ignore, and worse, it was spreading beyond pack territories into areas where humans might be directly threatened. "Any pattern to the attacks?" he asked, pulling out his own phone to document the scene. "All pack territories. All happened during the 3 nights leading up to the blood moon." "And Kieran?" Sarah's voice dropped. "All the feral shifters were found dead by dawn, like something burned them out from the inside." That was new information. Previous feral incidents had resulted in shifters who lost their human consciousness, but remained physically alive, requiring specialized facilities to contain them. If the ferals were dying after their transformation, it suggested the plague was evolving into something even more dangerous. Kieran's phone buzzed with an encrypted message that made his blood run cold. "Emergency Protocol Crimson. Report to the binding chamber immediately. Elder Ravencrest." He stared at the text, his mind racing. Elder Ravencrest was from the Nightshade Pack, Luna Nightshade's pack. The same pack his father had declared war on 20 years ago. The same pack whose territory had been burned and whose leaders had been murdered in the conflict that had ultimately led to Kieran's exile. They had no reason to contact him except, "I have to go," he told Sarah, already walking toward his motorcycle.
"Kieran, wait."
"What's Emergency Protocol Crimson?" He paused, one leg already swung over the bike. "Something that hasn't been invoked in over a century. Keep working the scene. If anyone asks, you're investigating reports of a meth lab explosion." The ride from the ruins of Crescent Falls to downtown Seattle took 45 minutes through winding mountain roads, but Kieran's enhanced reflexes and night vision allowed him to push speeds no human could safely maintain. The entire time, his wolf paced restlessly beneath his skin, responding to some stimulus he couldn't identify. As he navigated Seattle's late-night traffic, memories surfaced unbidden. His father, Marcus Blackthorne, standing over maps of neighboring territories, planning expansion campaigns that would cement their pack's dominance over the Pacific Northwest. His older brother, Vincent, eagerly volunteering for raid missions that left other packs broken and scattered. And himself, barely 18, watching in horror as his family's ambition turned them into the monsters other shifters feared. The night he'd been exiled replayed in his mind like a worn film. His refusal to participate in the assault on the Ravenclaw pack. His father's rage when Kieran had threatened to warn their intended victims. The pack tribunal that had stripped him of his name, his territory, and his family bonds. Vincent's parting words, "You're dead to us, brother. If we see you again, we'll finish what we started." 12 years of exile. 12 years of hunting rogues and protecting the innocent, trying to balance the scales his family had tipped toward darkness. It would never be enough, he knew that. But it was all he could offer. The Nightshade Tower dominated Seattle's skyline, a gleaming sphere of glass and steel that housed one of the most successful supernatural enterprises in North America. Nightshade Enterprises officially provided security consulting and private investigation services. Unofficially, they were the Pacific Northwest's primary supernatural law enforcement, mediating disputes between packs and handling threats too dangerous for human authorities. Kieran had never set foot in the building before night. The lobby was deserted except for a single security guard who checked his identification against a list and directed him to a private elevator. As the car descended past floors marked for public access, past corporate levels, down into depths that didn't appear on any building schematic, Kieran's wolf grew increasingly agitated. "She's here," his inner voice whispered. "Your mate is here." He'd been telling himself for years that mate bonds were romantic nonsense, biological programming that had no place in the modern world. Shifters could choose their partners based on compatibility and affection rather than supernatural compulsion. He'd had relationships, even a few he'd thought might develop into something permanent. But the moment the elevator doors opened and her scent hit him, wild roses and summer lightning, with an underlying musk that spoke of power and untamed nature, every rational thought fled his mind. Luna Nightshade stood with her back to the elevator, deep in conversation with an elderly man Kieran recognized as Elder Ravencrest. Even without seeing her face, he knew her with bone-deep certainty. The way she held herself spoke of confidence and authority, but also of careful control. Her long dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and she wore a business suit that managed to look both professional and somehow wild, as if civilization was a costume she wore rather than her natural state. When she turned to face him, Kieran forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with conventional standards and everything to do with the supernatural recognition singing through his veins. High cheekbones, full lips, and amber eyes that seemed to hold flecks of gold and fire. But it was the birthmark along her collarbone that confirmed what his wolf already knew, a crescent moon surrounded by ancient symbols that marked her as Crimson-born, the rarest of their kind. "Luna Nightshade," Elder Ravencrest said formally. "Meet Kieran Blackthorne." The change in her was immediate and devastating. The professional mask fell away, replaced by recognition, rage, and something that might have been betrayal. Her amber eyes blazed with supernatural fire as her scent shifted, taking on the sharp edge of anger and the metallic tang of adrenaline. "You brought him here?" Her voice dropped to a dangerous growl that made Kieran's wolf whimper with a desire to soothe her distress. "A blackthorn in our sacred chamber?" Elder Ravencrest tried to interject, but Luna cut him off with a gesture that revealed the claws extending from her fingertips. She was on the edge of involuntary transformation, her supernatural nature responding to the emotional trauma of facing her family's enemy. "This is insane. The Blackthorn Pack destroyed my family. There are sworn enemies. Whatever game you're playing, it's not a game." Kieran forced himself to speak calmly despite the chaos of emotions battering him. I didn't come here by choice. But the feral plague is spreading to human populations, and if we don't act soon, there won't be a supernatural world left to protect. He watched her process that information, saw the moment she pushed past her initial emotional response to really look at him. Her enhanced senses would tell her what his appearance already suggested, that he wasn't the pampered pack heir she expected. The scars on his hands, the worn quality of his clothes, the subtle wariness in his posture that spoke of years spent as an outsider. You're not with your pack, she realized. Haven't been for 12 years. He met her gaze steadily, letting her see the truth in his eyes. I was exiled when I refused to participate in their expansion wars. I've been hunting rogues and ferals ever since, trying to make amends for what my family did. Her scent shifted again, anger mixing with confusion and something that might have been hope. Making amends? Your father ordered my parents' execution. Your pack burned our ancestral lands. You think hunting a few rogues balances those scales? No, he said quietly, the weight of 20 years of guilt settling on his shoulders. Nothing balances those scales. But I'm trying anyway. Elder Ravencrest chose that moment to draw their attention back to the prophecy book, explaining the supernatural crisis that had brought them together. Kieran watched Luna's face as she processed the impossible truth that their mating bond was somehow key to preventing a supernatural apocalypse. This is impossible, she whispered, but her wolf had already recognized the truth. And yet, Kieran said gently, you felt it the moment I walked in. The recognition. The pull. Your wolf knows mine, just like mine knows yours. She wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to contain the riot of emotions he could scent on her, desire and fear, hope and rage, all tangled together in a knot that would take time and trust to unravel. When Elder Ravencrest explained the 3-month deadline, Kieran felt the weight of impossible responsibility settle over both of them. 3 blood moon cycles to overcome 20 years of enmity, to build trust between natural enemies, to forge a bond strong enough to heal their broken world. 3 months, Luna said finally, her voice steady despite the chaos he could sense beneath her surface control. 3 months, he confirmed. When she looked at him again, he saw the moment she made her choice, not to trust him, not yet, but to try. It was more than he had any right to hope for. Then we'd better get started, she said. And despite everything, the history between their families, the seemingly impossible task ahead of them, the weight of the supernatural world's survival resting on their shoulders, Kieran felt something he hadn't experienced in 12 years of exile. Hope. Luna's hands trembled as she turned the ancient pages of the prophecy book, her enhanced vision struggling to process the archaic symbols and illuminated text. The binding chamber felt smaller with Kieran's presence filling it, his pine and leather scent making it difficult to concentrate on anything beyond the mate recognition humming through her nervous system. The original text was written in the old tongue, Elder Ravencrest explained, his weathered finger tracing symbols that seemed to shift and shimmer in the mystical lighting. We've only recently been able to translate the complete prophecy, thanks to artifacts recovered from the Moonrise Pack archives before their territory fell to the ferals. Luna forced herself to focus on the words rather than the man standing barely 3 feet away. The prophecy was written in flowing script, bordered by illustrations of wolves in various states of transformation. At the center of each page, a blood moon dominated the imagery, its crimson light bathing everything in otherworldly fire. When shadow consumes the children of moon and earth, when brother turns on brother in feral rage, the crimson-born shall rise with her destined mate to heal the wounds that divide our sacred realm. Light and darkness must unite as one, silver moon and blood moon's fire combined, or all shall fall to endless night, and civilization's peace be left behind. Light and darkness, Luna murmured, glancing at Kieran despite herself. His midnight hair caught the chamber's silver illumination, making him look like a creature carved from shadows and starlight. Silver moon and blood moon's fire. Your crimson-born abilities manifest during blood moon cycles, Elder Ravencrest continued. Kieran's lineage carries the Shadow Walker bloodline, his family's power peaks during new moon darkness. Together, You represent the full lunar cycle. Shadow Walker? Luna looked between the elder and Kieran. I thought that was just legend. Most of my family's abilities are. Kieran's voice carried a hint of bitterness. Shadow walking, rage channeling, the ability to sever pack bonds. We were bred to be weapons, not leaders. It's part of why the Blackthorne pack became so destructive. Luna studied his face, noting the tension around his eyes when he spoke of his family. But you're different. I chose to be different. He moved closer to the altar, and Luna's wolf stirred restlessly at his proximity. When I was 17, I watched my father plan an assault on a pack whose only crime was refusing to submit to Blackthorne authority. Their alpha had newborn cubs. I couldn't be part of that. So you betrayed your own pack. The words came out harsher than Luna intended, but she needed to understand his motivations. Trust would have to be built on truth, no matter how uncomfortable. I warned the Ravenclaw pack what was coming. They evacuated before my father's forces arrived. Kieran's green eyes met hers steadily. My family considered it treason. I considered it the first decent thing I'd ever done. Elder Ravencrest cleared his throat, drawing their attention back to the prophecy. Your personal histories are relevant, but time is running short. The first blood moon cycle begins in 72 hours. By then, you'll need to have begun the bonding process. What does that involve? Luna asked, though part of her already knew. Ancient mating customs weren't exactly secret knowledge, but she'd never paid much attention to traditions she'd assumed wouldn't apply to her. The traditional bonding has 3 phases. Elder Ravencrest turned to a new page, revealing illustrations that made Luna's cheeks flush. Recognition, claiming, and transcendence. You've already experienced recognition, the instant supernatural attraction that confirms mate compatibility. Luna's body responded involuntarily to the memory of Kieran's scent overwhelming her senses, the way her wolf had practically purred with satisfaction the moment he'd entered the chamber. She crossed her arms, trying to regain her professional composure. Claiming involves the formal declaration of intent to bond, witnessed by both packs. Elder Ravencrest's finger traced an image of 2 wolves standing beneath a full moon, surrounded by their respective pack members. Given your unique circumstances, we may need to modify this tradition. My pack won't accept him, Luna said bluntly. The Blackthorne name is synonymous with murder and destruction in Nightshade territory. And my pack would kill him on sight if they knew he was here, Kieran added. The Blackthorne pack doesn't tolerate betrayal, even from exiles. Which brings us to our first challenge. Elder Ravencrest closed the prophecy book and moved to a wall-mounted cabinet filled with ancient artifacts. You'll need to establish a neutral territory where you can complete the bonding process safely. Somewhere neither pack can interfere. He withdrew a small silver key, its surface engraved with the same lunar symbols that marked Luna's birthmark. There's a property in the Olympic Mountains, a cabin that's been maintained by the Council of Elders for situations exactly like this. It's warded against supernatural tracking and protected by ancient treaties that forbid pack interference. Luna accepted the key, her fingers brushing Kieran's as he reached for it simultaneously. The contact sent electricity up her arm, and she saw his pupils dilate in response to the same supernatural charge. How long? She asked, her voice slightly breathless. The cabin is yours for as long as needed. But remember, you have 3 blood moon cycles to complete the full bonding process. Miss that deadline. Elder Ravencrest's expression grew grave. The prophecy suggests that failure will result in the permanent collapse of the barriers between human and supernatural worlds. No pressure, Kieran muttered, but Luna caught the worried tension in his shoulders. There's something else. Elder Ravencrest returned to the cabinet, this time withdrawing 2 silver pendants on leather cords. These will help you monitor the bonding process. They'll grow warmer as your connection deepens, and they'll provide some protection against supernatural attacks. Luna examined her pendant, noting the way the silver seemed to pulse with its own inner light. When she lifted it over her head, settling the cord around her neck, the metal grew pleasantly warm against her skin. What kind of attacks? Kieran asked, fastening his own pendant. The prophecy mentions forces that will try to prevent your bonding. We're not entirely sure what that means, but given the feral plague's timing, Elder Ravencrest shrugged. It's possible someone or something is deliberately trying to destabilize the supernatural world. Luna's phone buzzed with an urgent message from her assistant. Emergency board meeting moved to 6 a.m. Crescent Falls situation escalating. Human witnesses. I have to go, she said, showing the message to both men. Corporate responsibilities. I'll drive you to the cabin tomorrow evening, Kieran offered. That should give you time to handle your pack business, and for me to finish investigating the Crescent Falls attack. You were at Crescent Falls? Luna looked up from her phone, noting the grim expression that crossed his features. Fourth pack destroyed in 2 weeks. All during the approach to Blood Moon. All resulting in complete feral transformation. Kieran's jaw tightened. Luna, I think someone is deliberately triggering the plague. The pattern's too consistent to be natural. Elder Ravencrest moved closer, his expression alarmed. You think the bonding deadline is being accelerated intentionally? I think, Kieran said slowly, that someone wants the supernatural world to collapse. And they're using the feral plague to ensure it happens before Luna and I can complete our bond. Luna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November weather outside. Then we're not just racing against time. We're racing against sabotage. Which means, Elder Ravencrest said quietly, that your bond is even more crucial than we realized. Someone considers your potential union a threat worth preventing at any cost. Luna looked at Kieran, noting the way his green eyes had darkened with determination. Despite everything between their families, despite the impossible nature of their situation, she found herself trusting the resolve she saw in his expression. Tomorrow evening, she agreed. The cabin. Tomorrow evening, he confirmed. As they left the binding chamber together, Luna couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than a simple mating bond. The weight of the silver pendant against her chest reminded her that forces beyond their control were already moving, threatening not just their potential relationship, but the survival of their entire world. Behind them, Elder Ravencrest remained with the prophecy book, but Luna caught his whispered words as the elevator doors closed. May the moon goddess protect them both. They're going to need all the help they can get. The Nightshade Pack's corporate boardroom felt more like a war council than a business meeting as Luna took her seat at the polished mahogany table. Around her, the Pack's senior members radiated tension that had nothing to do with quarterly reports and everything to do with the supernatural crisis threatening their territory. Marcus Ironwood, her father's former beta and her surrogate father since childhood, stood at the head of the table with a tactical map of the Pacific Northwest spread before him. Red pins marked the locations of feral attacks, creating a pattern that made Luna's stomach clench with dread. 4 packs destroyed in 14 days, Marcus announced, his grizzled face grim. Crescent Falls, Moonrise, Riverstone, and Pine Ridge. 37 shifters dead, another 15 missing and presumed feral. Dr. Rebecca Chen, the pack's medical officer, leaned forward in her chair. The feral transformations are unlike anything in our medical records. Complete loss of human consciousness within hours, followed by rapid physical deterioration. It's as if something is burning out their neural pathways. Any connection between the affected packs? Asked Sarah Nightshade, Luna's adoptive sister and the pack's chief negotiator. Her sharp blue eyes swept the room, cataloging everyone's reactions. Geographic proximity to ancient territorial boundaries, Marcus replied, pointing to areas of the map marked with silver ink. All 4 packs held lands that were disputed during the Great Pack Wars 2 centuries ago. Luna studied the pattern, her enhanced memory recalling childhood lessons about pack history. The territories that were claimed by conquest rather than treaty. Exactly. Marcus met her gaze. Lands where blood was spilled in territorial disputes, where pack bonds were severed by violence rather than negotiation. Thomas Winwood, the pack's master of arms, drummed his fingers against the table. Someone's targeting unstable territories. But why now? What's triggered the timing? Luna's hand unconsciously went to the silver pendant beneath her blouse, feeling its warmth pulse against her skin. She couldn't tell them about the prophecy, not yet. The revelation that their salvation depended on her bonding with a Blackthorne would shatter pack morale at the worst possible moment. "There's something else," Dr. Chen continued, sliding a tablet across the table to Luna. "We've been monitoring supernatural energy fluctuations across the region. Look at the pattern from the past month." The screen displayed a graph showing mystical energy readings spiking in regular intervals, building toward peaks that corresponded with the approach of each blood moon phase. "The energy's building toward something," Luna realized. "A convergence event," Sarah said quietly. "Like the old stories describe. When supernatural forces align to create. What? A portal? A summoning? Or a sacrifice?" Thomas added grimly. "Something that requires the death of multiple packs to power." Marcus straightened, his alpha authority filling the room despite his beta rank. "Which is why we're implementing total lockdown protocols. No pack member leaves the building without armed escort. No territorial patrols smaller than 6 wolves. And Luna." His weathered face softened slightly. "I need you to consider relocating to the safe house until this crisis passes." "Absolutely not." Luna stood, her amber eyes flashing with supernatural fire. "I won't hide while our people are in danger." "Your people need you alive," Sarah interjected. "You're the Nightshade heir. If something happens to you, if something happens to me, the pack continues under the Leadership Council, just as we've planned." Luna moved to the window, gazing out at the Seattle skyline where dawn was beginning to lighten the November sky. "But I won't abandon my responsibilities out of fear." Marcus exchanged a worried glance with Sarah. "Luna, there's something you should know. We've been monitoring communications from other pack territories. There are rumors." "What kind of rumors?" "That the attacks aren't random. That someone is specifically targeting packs with certain bloodlines." Marcus paused, clearly reluctant to continue. "Bloodlines connected to the old prophecies." Luna's heart stuttered, but she kept her expression neutral. "Which prophecies?" "The Crimson-born legends. Luna, your birthmark, your transformation patterns, you fit the old descriptions perfectly. If someone is hunting descendants of the prophetic bloodlines, then I'm already a target whether I hide or not." Luna turned back to face the room, her decision crystallizing. "Which is why I need to take a more active role in investigating these attacks." "Luna, no." Sarah stood, her negotiator's instincts recognizing the determination in her sister's voice. "Whatever you're planning." "I'm planning to do my job," Luna said firmly. "The pack hired the best supernatural investigation consultant available. I'm going to work with him to get to the bottom of this crisis." The room fell silent. Luna could practically hear the gears turning in Marcus's mind as he processed her words. "Investigation consultant?" Thomas frowned. "We didn't hire any outside consultants." "I did." Luna met each pair of eyes around the table. "Someone with extensive experience hunting ferals and rogues. Someone who's been tracking these attacks longer than anyone." "Who?" Sarah's voice carried the sharp edge of suspicion that made her such an effective negotiator. Luna took a breath, knowing her next words would change everything. "Kieran Blackthorne." The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Thomas shot to his feet, his chair clattering backward. Sarah's face went pale as death. Dr. Chen's tablet slipped from nerveless fingers. And Marcus? Marcus looked like she'd just announced her intention to burn down the building. "A Blackthorne." His voice was deadly quiet. "You hired a Blackthorne." "I hired the best tracker in the Pacific Northwest," Luna corrected, her alpha authority rising to meet the challenge. "Someone who spent 12 years hunting the exact creatures that are now threatening our people." "The same creatures his family probably created," Thomas snarled, his own transformation beginning as stress triggered his wolf nature. "Luna, have you lost your mind? The Blackthorne pack murdered your parents. They burned our ancestral lands. They exiled Kieran 20 years ago for refusing to participate in their wars," Luna interrupted. "He's been working against them ever since." "So he claims," Sarah said, her negotiator's instincts focused on finding holes in the story. "Luna, this could be an elaborate infiltration attempt. Use our current crisis to gain access to pack intelligence, our defenses. I've verified his exile status through 3 independent sources, Luna lied smoothly, including Council of Elders records. Kieran Blackthorne has been persona non grata with his birth pack for over a decade. Marcus moved closer, his weathered face creased with concern. Even if that's true, Luna, the emotional cost to you, working with someone whose family destroyed yours, will be worth it if we save lives. Luna softened her voice, letting them see the pain she carried. Marcus, I know this is difficult. I know it seems like betrayal. But we're losing packs faster than we can track them. We need someone who understands feral behavior, who's seen these attacks before. Dr. Chun leaned forward. What's his theory about the transformations? He thinks they're being triggered artificially. Someone or something is deliberately creating ferals to destabilize pack territories. Luna moved back to the table, grateful for the shift from emotional arguments to tactical discussion. The timing, the geographic pattern, the accelerated deterioration, it's too consistent to be natural. Biological warfare, Thomas muttered, his transformation receding as his tactical mind engaged. Use our own nature against us. If that's true, Sarah said slowly, then we need all the intelligence we can get, even from questionable sources. Marcus studied Luna's face for a long moment. There's something you're not telling us. Luna felt the weight of the prophecy pressing against her chest like the silver pendant's warmth. There's always something I'm not telling you, Marcus. That's what it means to be pack leader. Sometimes you carry information that would endanger others. And sometimes, he said quietly, pack leaders make decisions that seem impossible to understand. Yes. Luna met his gaze steadily. Sometimes they do. The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Marcus nodded slowly. What do you need from us? Cover story for a strategic retreat. I'm taking a few days to establish a secure base of operations away from pack territory. Somewhere Kieran and I can work without risking pack security or his detection by hostile forces. How long? Sarah asked. 72 hours initially. Possibly longer depending on what we discover. Thomas crossed his arms. Security detail? Just me and Kieran. Too many people will attract attention. Luna. Marcus's voice carried the weight of 20 years of surrogate fatherhood. If this goes wrong, we were already doomed anyway. Luna gathered her files, her decision made. But if it goes right, we might save every pack in the region. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. For what it's worth, the medical evidence supports artificial causation. The neural degradation patterns are too rapid and too consistent for natural feral transformation. Thank you, Rebecca. Luna paused at the boardroom door. All of you. I know this isn't easy to accept. Luna. Sarah's voice stopped her. Be careful. Not just of external threats, but Blackthorne bloodlines carry powerful supernatural abilities. Manipulation, influence, emotional control. Don't let your guard down. I won't, Luna promised, though she could feel the mate bond humming through her veins even at the thought of seeing Kieran again. As she left the boardroom, Luna heard Thomas mutter to Marcus, "This is going to end badly." Marcus's reply was too quiet for human ears, but Luna's enhanced hearing caught every word. It was always going to end badly, Thomas. The question is whether she can save us all in the process. 6 hours later, Luna stood in her penthouse apartment, packing a bag for what might be the most important 3 days of her life. The space reflected her dual nature, corporate efficiency mixed with wild, untamed elements. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Seattle skyline, while hand-carved wooden furniture and Native American art honored her supernatural heritage. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, leaving in 1 hour. Meet me in the building's underground garage. K. Luna stared at the message, her heart rate spiking at the simple initial. In 12 hours, her entire world had shifted. This morning she'd been Luna Nightshade, pack heiress focused on corporate responsibilities and supernatural politics. Tonight, she was apparently destined to mate with her family's greatest enemy to save the world from apocalypse. No pressure at all. She packed practical clothes, jeans, sweaters, hiking boots suitable for mountain terrain. The cabin Elder Ravencrest had described was deep in the Olympic Mountains, far from civilization and supernatural politics. A place where she and Kieran could explore their impossible bond without interference from their respective packs. The thought of being alone with him for 3 days made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. The mate recognition was growing stronger by the hour, making it difficult to think about anything except his pine and leather scent, the way his green eyes had darkened when he'd looked at her, the electric shock of contact when their fingers had brushed. Luna caught her reflection in the bedroom mirror, noting the flush that had crept up her neck and the way her amber eyes seemed to glow with inner fire. Her wolf was already responding to the approaching blood moon, her transformation cycle accelerating in preparation for the bonding process. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Sarah or Marcus with last-minute concerns about her plan. Instead, Dr. Rebecca Chin entered, carrying a small medical bag. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I wanted to give you something before you left." "What kind of something?" Luna asked, wariness creeping into her voice. Rebecca set her bag on the coffee table and withdrew several small vials filled with various liquids. "Suppressants, in case you need to slow your transformation cycle. Accelerants, if you need to trigger a change quickly." And she hesitated, pulling out a final vial filled with silver liquid. "Emergency contraceptive. Just in case." Luna stared at the vials, reality hitting her like a physical blow. The bonding process wasn't just about supernatural connection and emotional intimacy. Ancient mating customs included physical claiming, the biological imperative to create the next generation of pack leadership. "Rebecca, I'm not sure." "Luna." The older woman's voice was gentle but firm. "I've been pack physician for 30 years. I've seen what happens when supernatural bonds are formed without proper preparation. Your body is already responding to mate recognition. Within 72 hours, you'll be experiencing biological urges that override rational thought. You think I'll lose control? I think you're about to undergo one of the most powerful supernatural experiences our kind can have, with someone you barely know and have every reason to distrust." Rebecca met her gaze steadily. "I want you to have choices." Luna pocketed the vials, grateful for the older woman's foresight. "Thank you. Be safe, Luna. And remember, mate bonds can be incredibly powerful, but they don't erase personality or free will. Trust your instincts, not just your wolf nature." After Rebecca left, Luna finished packing in thoughtful silence. The doctor's words echoed in her mind as she considered the challenge ahead. How did you build trust with someone whose family had destroyed yours? How did you navigate supernatural attraction while maintaining emotional boundaries? How did you save the world while protecting your own heart? Her phone buzzed again. "Ready when you are."
K.
Luna shouldered her bag, grabbed her keys, and headed for the elevator. Whatever happened next, she was committed to seeing it through. The supernatural world's survival depended on her willingness to trust her greatest enemy. As the elevator descended toward the underground garage, Luna's hand went to the silver pendant at her throat. The metal was warm against her skin, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her accelerated heartbeat. The doors opened to reveal Kieran leaning against a black motorcycle, his own overnight bag secured to the bike's rear compartment. He'd changed from his earlier practical clothes into riding gear, leather jacket, heavy boots, and dark jeans that emphasized his tall, lean frame. When he looked up and saw her, his green eyes flared with the same recognition fire she felt burning through her own veins. "Ready?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion he was clearly trying to suppress. "Ready," Luna confirmed, though she wasn't sure if she was answering his question or making a declaration to the universe. Kieran handed her a spare helmet and helped secure her bag to the motorcycle. When his fingers brushed her wrist during the process, Luna felt electricity shoot up her arm, and she saw his pupils dilate in response to the same supernatural charge. 72 hours. 3 days to explore the most dangerous relationship of her life, while racing against time to prevent supernatural apocalypse. Luna settled onto the motorcycle behind Kieran, her arms wrapping around his waist as the engine roared to life. Through the leather of his jacket, she could feel the warmth of his body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the barely contained power of his wolf nature. As they rode into the November night, heading toward the Olympic Mountains and whatever destiny awaited them there, Luna couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving her old life behind forever. Behind them, in the shadows of the parking garage, a figure watched their departure with inhuman eyes that glowed red in the darkness. When the motorcycle's taillights disappeared into Seattle traffic, the figure lifted a phone to its ear. "They're on their way to the cabin," it said in a voice like grinding stone. "Everything is proceeding according to plan." The cabin materialized from the Olympic Mountains' ancient forest like something from a supernatural fairy tale. Built from weathered cedar and stone, it seemed to grow organically from the mountainside, its windows glowing with warm light against the November darkness. As Kieran cut the motorcycle's engine, Luna felt the weight of mystical protection settle around them like an invisible blanket. "It's beautiful," she breathed, dismounting from the bike and removing her helmet. Her enhanced senses immediately cataloged their new environment: pine needles and mountain air, the distant sound of running water, and underneath it all, the subtle thrum of ancient magic woven into the very foundation of the place. "And completely isolated," Kieran added, securing their bags. "The nearest human settlement is 30 miles down the mountain. Cell service is non-existent, and the access road is warded against supernatural tracking." Luna approached the cabin's front door, noting the silver inlay worked into the wooden frame in protective patterns. When she touched the door handle, the metal grew warm beneath her fingers, responding to her crimson-born nature. The door swung open silently, revealing a space that was both rustic and surprisingly luxurious. The main room featured a massive stone fireplace flanked by comfortable leather furniture, with a kitchen area equipped with modern appliances and a dining table crafted from a single piece of ancient oak. Stairs led to what she assumed was a loft bedroom area, while windows on 3 sides offered panoramic views of the surrounding wilderness. "One bedroom," Kieran observed, following her inside and closing the door behind them. "I noticed that." Luna set her bag down, hyper-aware of the implications. The mate bond hummed between them like a live wire, making the intimate space feel even smaller. "There's probably a couch." "Luna." Kieran's voice stopped her nervous rambling. "We need to talk about what's happening between us." She turned to face him, noting the way the firelight played across his features, emphasizing the strong line of his jaw and the intensity in his green eyes. The mate bond. Among other things. He moved closer, and Luna felt her wolf stir restlessly at his proximity. "I know this situation is impossible for you. My family destroyed yours. 20 years ago, I would have been standing with my father when he ordered your parents' execution. But you weren't." Luna found herself studying his face, searching for truth in his expression. "You were 18 when you were exiled. That makes you 28 now, my age exactly. The same age your parents were when they died." Kieran's jaw tightened. "I've thought about that a lot over the years. How young they must have been, how much life they had ahead of them before my father's ambition cut it short." Luna felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. "Tell me what really happened the night you were exiled." Kieran moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames as if they held answers to impossible questions. "My father had been planning the assault on your pack's territory for months. He called it a liberation, claimed the Nightshade pack had grown too powerful, too influential with the Council of Elders." "And you believed him?" "At first." Kieran's voice carried the weight of old shame. "I was raised to believe pack expansion was natural, that stronger wolves deserved larger territories. But when I saw the tactical plans..." He turned back to face her. "Your parents weren't targeted for their land or their political influence. They were targeted because they were crimson-born bloodline carriers." Luna's breath caught. "What?" "My father had researched your family genealogy going back 12 generations. He knew about the prophecy, Luna. He knew that someday a crimson-born would rise to challenge the existing power structure. So he decided to eliminate the bloodline entirely." The revelation hit Luna like a physical blow. Her parents hadn't died in a random territorial dispute. They'd been murdered specifically to prevent the prophecy from being fulfilled. But I survived. Because I warned Elder Ravencrest. Kieran stepped closer, and Luna could see the pain in his eyes. I couldn't live with the knowledge that my family was planning genocide. So, I broke pack law and contacted your people directly. That's why you were exiled. Not for refusing to fight, but for actively betraying the mission. My father called it the ultimate treachery. Choosing the enemy over blood family. Kieran's voice dropped to a whisper. He wasn't entirely wrong. Luna felt tears prick her eyes as 20 years of carefully constructed hatred began to crumble. You saved my life. I saved a child I'd never met because the alternative was unthinkable. Kieran reached out hesitantly, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. I had no idea that child would grow up to be your mate, Luna finished, leaning into his touch despite every rational instinct screaming warnings. My salvation, he corrected softly. The mate bond flared between them, stronger than ever, fueled by truth and the beginning of genuine trust. Luna felt her wolf surge forward, recognizing not just a potential mate but a protector, someone who had sacrificed everything to keep her safe before they'd even met. Kieran, she breathed, moving closer until only inches separated them. Luna, we should. His words cut off as she rose on her toes, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that tasted like forgiveness and possibility. The connection was immediate and overwhelming. Kieran's arms came around her, pulling her against his chest as the mate bond sang through both their nervous systems. Luna felt his wolf rising to meet hers, felt the supernatural recognition that went deeper than blood or bone. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their eyes bright with supernatural fire. That was. Luna struggled to find words. Inevitable, Kieran finished, resting his forehead against hers. But Luna, we need to be careful. The bond is powerful, but it's also dangerous if we move too fast. She nodded, though every cell in her body was screaming for closer contact. Dr. Chen warned me about biological imperatives. How the mate recognition can override rational thought. Smart woman. Kieran stepped back reluctantly, putting necessary distance between them. The traditional bonding process has built-in safeguards, time for partners to build emotional trust alongside physical attraction. How much time do we have? Luna glanced toward the windows, where the darkness was beginning to show hints of pre-dawn gray. The blood moon cycle peaks tomorrow night. We have about 36 hours to decide if we're going to attempt the claiming ceremony. Luna moved to the kitchen area, needing something to do with her hands. And if we don't, the next cycle isn't for another month. Given the acceleration of the feral plague. Kieran shrugged grimly. We might not have another opportunity. Luna found coffee supplies and began preparing a pot, grateful for the familiar ritual. Tell me about the claiming ceremony. What does it actually involve? Supernatural vulnerability, Kieran said, joining her in the kitchen. Both partners have to lower all their defenses, mental, emotional, and physical. The bond forms through complete trust and acceptance. And if there isn't complete trust, the ceremony fails. Or worse, it creates a corrupted bond that can drive both partners insane. Luna paused in her coffee preparation, the weight of their situation settling over her like a physical force. So we have 36 hours to overcome 20 years of family enmity and learn to trust each other completely. When you put it like that, it sounds impossible, Kieran admitted. Maybe it is impossible. Luna met his gaze across the kitchen island. But maybe that's exactly why it's the key to saving everyone. The prophecy doesn't call for an easy solution. It calls for light and darkness to unite despite every reason they shouldn't. Kieran's expression softened. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone harder. More cynical. I thought 20 years of believing my family murdered yours would have made you. He gestured vaguely. A revenge-obsessed warrior princess? Luna smiled despite the tension. Sorry to disappoint. You could never disappoint me, Kieran said quietly, and the sincerity in his voice made Luna's heart skip. The coffee finished brewing, filling the cabin with rich aroma that helped ground them both in the present moment. They settled at the dining table with steaming mugs, the silence comfortable rather than awkward. "Tell me about your exile," Luna said eventually. "What have you been doing for 12 years? "Hunting rogues, mostly. Ferals, lone wolves who've lost pack connections, shifters who prey on humans." Kieran wrapped his hands around his mug, staring into the dark liquid. "The Council of Elders maintains a list of supernatural threats that fall outside normal pack jurisdiction. I became their unofficial enforcement." "That sounds lonely."
It was.
He looked up at her. "But it also gave me purpose. Every rogue I stopped, every threat I eliminated, it felt like making amends for what my family had done. And now I know it was never about amends. It was about becoming worthy of this moment." Kieran reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "Worthy of you." Luna felt the mate bond pulse between them, warmer and stronger than before. Trust was building, layer by careful layer, as they shared truth and vulnerability. "What about you?"
Kieran asked.
"What's it like being groomed as pack heiress?" "Complicated." Luna smiled ruefully. "Everyone expects me to be my father reborn, the perfect alpha leader who never doubts, never fails, never shows weakness. But that's not who you are. That's not who anyone is. But the pack needs symbols as much as leaders, and I'm both." Luna traced patterns on the table's wooden surface. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if my parents had lived. If I'd grown up as their daughter instead of their symbolic replacement." "You would have been loved for yourself instead of revered for your bloodline," Kieran said softly. "Yes." Luna felt tears prick her eyes again.
Exactly that.
"For what it's worth," Kieran said, catching her hand in his, "I see you. Not the Crimson-born, not the pack heiress, not the supernatural symbol. Just Luna. And she's extraordinary." This time when their lips met, the kiss was gentle, exploratory, building trust as much as passion. Luna felt something deep inside her begin to heal, wounds she hadn't even realized she carried from a lifetime of being valued for her bloodline rather than her heart. When they separated, dawn was painting the windows with golden light. "We should rest," Kieran said reluctantly. "Tomorrow night will be intense." Luna nodded, though the thought of sleeping alone in the loft bedroom while he remained downstairs felt wrong somehow. The mate bond had strengthened to the point where physical separation caused actual discomfort. "Luna," Kieran said as she headed for the stairs. "Whatever happens tomorrow night, whatever we decide about the claiming ceremony, I want you to know that meeting you has been the greatest privilege of my life." She turned back to face him, her heart full of emotions too complex to name. "Get some sleep, Kieran. Tomorrow we find out if love really can conquer all." As she climbed the stairs to the loft bedroom, Luna heard him settling onto the couch below. Even separated by distance and a floor, she could feel his presence like warmth against her skin. Outside, the Olympic Mountains stood silent guard around their sanctuary, while ancient magic wove protective barriers that would keep the world at bay for one more day. But in the shadows beyond the cabin's mystical protection, red eyes watched and waited, counting down the hours until the blood moon would give them the power to strike. Luna woke to the scent of bacon and coffee drifting up from the kitchen below, her wolf stirring lazily as morning sunlight streamed through the loft windows. For a moment, she lay still, savoring the domestic intimacy of waking up to Kieran cooking breakfast. It felt dangerously close to the life she'd never let herself imagine. Peaceful mornings with someone who understood her supernatural nature, who saw beyond her pack responsibilities to the woman underneath. "Careful," she murmured to herself as she padded to the bathroom. "Don't get attached to fantasies." But when she came downstairs 20 minutes later, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, Kieran looked up from the stove with a smile that made her heart skip. "Good morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. "I hope you like your eggs scrambled. I'm not exactly a gourmet chef. Scrambled is perfect." Luna accepted the plate he offered, noting the way his fingers lingered against hers during the exchange. The mate bond hummed contentedly at the contact, stronger than ever after their emotional breakthrough the night before. They ate in comfortable silence, the morning sunlight streaming through the cabin's windows and highlighting the peaceful wilderness beyond. For the first time in years, Luna felt truly relaxed, as if the constant weight of pack responsibilities had lifted from her shoulders. No regrets? Kieran asked eventually, his green eyes searching her face. About what? About trusting me. About coming here. He set down his coffee mug, his expression serious. About kissing your family's supposed enemy. Luna considered the question honestly. Every rational part of her mind insisted this was madness. Trusting a Blackthorne, allowing the mate bond to influence her judgment, risking everything for a supernatural connection she barely understood. But her wolf knew better. Her wolf recognized truth when it found it. No regrets, she said firmly. But Kieran, we need to talk about what happens after tomorrow night. After the claiming ceremony, he clarified. If we go through with it. If the bond actually forms. Luna pushed scrambled eggs around her plate, trying to organize her thoughts. Our packs will never accept this. The Nightshades will see it as betrayal, and the Blackthorns will see it as weakness. I know. Kieran's jaw tightened. I've been thinking about that all night. And we'll have to create something new. A pack that isn't bound by old grudges or territorial disputes. He leaned forward, intensity burning in his eyes. The supernatural world is changing, Luna. The feral plague, the increasing human awareness, the breakdown of traditional territories. Maybe it's time for new traditions. Luna felt a spark of excitement at the possibility. A pack based on choice rather than bloodline. Merit rather than inheritance. Protection rather than conquest, Kieran added. There are others like us. Exiles, refugees from destroyed packs, lone wolves who've never found their place in traditional hierarchy. It could work, Luna said slowly, her strategic mind already considering the logistics. But it would make us enemies of the establishment. The Council of Elders, the territorial alphas, everyone who benefits from the current system. We're already enemies of the establishment if we bond, Kieran pointed out. At least this way, we'd be working toward something positive instead of just surviving. Luna's phone buzzed with an encrypted message that made her frown. She'd specifically told Marcus and Sarah not to contact her except in emergencies. What is it? Kieran asked, noting her expression. Sarah. Luna showed in the message. Emergency council session called for tonight. All territorial alphas required to attend. Topic. Crimson-born protocols. Be careful.
S.
Kieran's face went pale. They know. About us? About the prophecy. Luna, if the council is implementing Crimson-born protocols, it means they're either trying to protect you or control you. What's the difference? Protection means keeping you safe until the crisis passes. Control means using you as a weapon against whatever is causing the feral plague. Kieran stood, pacing to the window. Either way, it means our time here is limited. Luna felt panic flutter in her chest. How limited? If they're meeting tonight, they'll send retrieval teams by tomorrow morning at the latest. Kieran's expression was grim. We have about 18 hours before the sanctuary becomes a battleground. Then we accelerate the timeline. Luna stood as well, decision crystallizing in her mind. The claiming ceremony happens tonight. Luna, that's incredibly dangerous. The traditional preparation period exists for a reason. The traditional world doesn't exist anymore, Luna interrupted. You said it yourself, everything is changing. Maybe we need to change with it. Kieran moved closer, his hands cupping her face gently. Are you sure? Once we begin the ceremony, there's no going back. If something goes wrong, we'll face it together. Luna leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his presence. But if we don't try, the feral plague continues spreading, the supernatural world collapses, and everyone we care about dies anyway. When you put it like that. Kieran managed a slight smile. How do you want to spend our last day of freedom? Luna felt heat rise in her cheeks at the implications of the question, but she also felt a deeper need to know him completely before they risked everything on supernatural bond formation. I want to understand your wolf, she said. The Shadow Walker abilities, the transformation differences, what it means to carry Blackthorne bloodline power. That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? Something more traditional. Getting to know each other's favorite movies, childhood memories, hopes for the future. Kieran's smile turned rueful. Normal relationship stuff. Kieran, in about 12 hours, we're going to attempt a supernatural bonding ritual that could either save the world or drive us both insane. I think we're past normal relationship stuff. He laughed, the sound rich and warm. Fair point. What do you want to know about shadow walker abilities? Everything. Start with shadow walking itself. How does it work? Kieran moved to the living room, Luna following close behind. It's connected to darkness manipulation. Not creating shadows, but moving through existing ones. He gestured toward a shadowy corner near the fireplace. Watch. One moment he was standing beside her, solid and warm. The next, he seemed to dissolve into darkness, his form becoming indistinct before vanishing entirely. Luna's enhanced vision could track movement through the shadows along the wall, a flowing darkness that defied normal physics. He reformed in the shadowy corner, stepping out of the darkness as if emerging from a doorway. Incredible, Luna breathed. How far can you travel? As far as the shadows extend. In full darkness, I can move miles instantaneously. In bright daylight. He shrugged. Maybe 20 feet between distinct shadow patches. And the other abilities? Pack bond severance is the most dangerous. Kieran's expression grew serious. I can cut the supernatural connections that bind shifters to their packs. It's irreversible and unpleasant for the target. Have you ever used it?
Twice.
Both times on ferals who retained enough pack connection to endanger their former families. Kieran's jaw tightened. It's not something I do lightly. Show me your wolf form, Luna said impulsively. Kieran's eyebrows rose. Here?
Now.
I need to see all of you before tonight. No secrets, no hidden aspects. Luna met his gaze steadily. If we're going to trust each other completely, I need to know what I'm bonding with. Luna, my wolf form is different. Larger than normal, darker, with markings that make it obvious I carry Blackthorne bloodline. He hesitated. Your pack trained you to recognize enemy bloodlines on sight. My pack trained me to recognize a lot of things. That doesn't mean they were right about all of them. Kieran studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Outside. Give me a few minutes. Luna stepped onto the cabin's wraparound porch while Kieran disappeared into the bathroom to undress. The November air was crisp but not uncomfortably cold, and the surrounding forest was alive with the sounds of birds and small animals going about their morning routines. When Kieran emerged from the cabin, he'd stripped to just his jeans, his muscular torso marked with scars that spoke of years spent fighting rogues and worse. But it was the silver markings along his ribs and shoulders that made Luna's breath catch, intricate patterns that looked like tribal tattoos, but were clearly supernatural in origin. Bloodline marks, he explained, noting her stare. They appeared when I first shifted, marking me as carrying Shadow Walker genetics. They're beautiful, Luna said honestly. The markings seemed to shift and flow in the morning light, creating patterns that were hypnotic and otherworldly. Kieran's expression softened. Thank you. Most people find them disturbing. Most people are idiots. He laughed, the sound easing some of the tension in his shoulders. Ready? Luna nodded, stepping back to give him space for the transformation. Shifting was always deeply personal for werewolves, a moment of vulnerability when the human consciousness merged with its wild counterpart. Luna had seen hundreds of pack transformations, but watching Kieran was different. Intimate. Sacred. The change began in his eyes, green irises darkening to forest depths as his pupils expanded. His breathing deepened, muscles rippling beneath scarred skin as supernatural energy began to build. The silver markings along his torso seemed to pulse with their own light, growing brighter as the transformation progressed. When the shift completed, Luna found herself face-to-face with the largest wolf she'd ever seen. Kieran's wolf form was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Midnight black fur with silver markings that matched his human bloodline marks, He stood nearly 4 feet at the shoulder with the lean, powerful build of a born predator. His eyes retained their forest green color, but they seemed to hold depths that spoke of ancient magic and dangerous power. "My God," Luna whispered, approaching slowly with her hand extended. The wolf, Kieran, watched her with intelligence that was completely human despite his animal form. When her fingers made contact with his fur, Luna felt the mate bond flare to life with unprecedented intensity. His wolf recognized hers on a level that transcended human understanding, accepting her touch with a rumbling sound that was part contentment, part possessive claim. "You're beautiful," she murmured, running her hands through his thick fur. "Dangerous, powerful, but beautiful." Kieran's wolf pressed closer, his massive head nuzzling against her shoulder. Luna felt his acceptance, his trust, his willingness to be vulnerable with her despite every instinct that should have warned him away. "My turn," she said, stepping back reluctantly. Kieran shifted back to human form with fluid grace, his green eyes bright with emotion as he reached for his discarded clothes. "Luna, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She was already moving toward the cabin door. Complete honesty, remember? Luna's own transformation space was the cabin's loft bedroom, where she could undress in privacy before attempting the shift. Her wolf had been restless all morning, eager to meet Kieran's in their natural forms. Unlike Kieran's quick transformation, Luna's shift was complicated by her crimson-born nature. The change could only complete fully during blood moon phases, but she could achieve a partial transformation that would allow Kieran to see her true supernatural form. Luna closed her eyes, reaching for the wild energy that lived beneath her human consciousness. The familiar ache began in her bones as her body prepared for the shift. Her breathing deepened, and she felt her senses expand, sense becoming more distinct, sounds growing sharper, her awareness of the surrounding forest increasing exponentially. When she emerged onto the porch, Luna existed in a state between human and wolf. Her amber eyes glowed with supernatural fire, her canine teeth had extended into fangs, and her hands bore claws that gleamed silver in the morning light. The crescent moon birthmark on her collarbone pulsed with its own inner radiance. Kieran's breath caught at the sight of her. "Incredible. This is as far as I can shift without the blood moon's influence," Luna explained, her voice carrying a deeper timbre that spoke of her wolf nature. "But tonight you'll be fully transformed for the claiming ceremony," Kieran finished, his eyes dark with understanding and desire. Luna let her partial transformation recede, returning to fully human form. "Now you've seen all of me. And you're magnificent," Kieran said, pulling her into his arms. "Powerful, beautiful, and completely terrifying in the best possible way." Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of trust and growing love, the mate bond singing between them with promise of what could be. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, their supernatural natures responding to each other with increasing intensity. "We need to prepare for tonight," Luna said reluctantly. "What kind of preparation?" "Mental, emotional, spiritual." Luna moved back into the cabin, Kieran following close behind. The claiming ceremony requires complete vulnerability from both partners. No barriers, no defenses, no secrets. "That sounds terrifying," Kieran admitted. "It is terrifying. It's also the only way to form a bond strong enough to fulfill the prophecy." Luna settled on the couch, pulling Kieran down beside her. "Tell me your worst fear." "About the ceremony?" "About anything. About everything." Luna turned to face him fully. "If we're going to be completely vulnerable with each other tonight, we might as well start practicing now." Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes staring into the cold fireplace. "I'm afraid I'll hurt you," he said finally. "My family's bloodline carries violence in our genes. What if, when all my barriers are down, what if the monster shows through? What if it does?" Luna asked gently. "What if you show me your worst aspects and I accept them anyway?" "That seems impossible." "A lot of impossible things have happened in the last 48 hours. Luna took his hand, intertwining their fingers. "My worst fear is that I'll lose myself in the bond. that Luna Nightshade will disappear and only the Crimson-born will remain. The prophecy does say that light and darkness must unite as one, Kieran said thoughtfully. But does that mean we cease to exist as individuals? Do we become some sort of supernatural entity that saves the world but isn't really us anymore? Luna leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. I've spent my whole life fighting to be seen as Luna rather than just a prophetic symbol. What if completing the bond erases all of that? Then we make sure it doesn't. Kieran's arm tightened around her. Whatever the bond creates, we insist it honors who we are individually as well as who we become together. Is that even possible? I don't know. But I know that the Luna I've gotten to know over the past 2 days is someone worth preserving. Someone I'd fight to protect, even from a supernatural bond if necessary. Luna felt tears prick her eyes at the fierce protectiveness in his voice. How do you do that? Do what? Make me feel safe and understood at the same time. I've never had that before. Because you've never had someone who chose you for yourself rather than your bloodline or your position. Kieran pressed a gentle kiss to the top of her head. Your pack loves the Crimson-born. I love Luna. The simple declaration hung in the air between them, profound and terrifying and absolutely right. I love you too, Luna whispered, the words feeling both foreign and inevitable on her tongue. They spent the rest of the day in quiet conversation, sharing memories and fears and dreams for a future that seemed both impossible and essential. As afternoon faded into evening, Luna felt the pull of the approaching blood moon growing stronger, her supernatural senses sharpening in preparation for the night ahead. It's time, she said as darkness began to fall outside the cabin windows. Kieran nodded, his expression serious but determined. What do we need to do? The traditional ceremony requires a sacred space, usually marked by silver and blessed by pack elders. Luna looked around the cabin, noting the silver inlay in the door frames and windows. This place will work. The protections and blessings are already woven into the structure. And then we trust each other completely and hope the universe is in a benevolent mood. As they prepared for the claiming ceremony that would either save their world or destroy them both, neither Luna nor Kieran noticed the red eyes watching from the forest beyond the cabin's mystical protections. The enemy had been waiting for this moment, counting down the hours until the blood moon would give them the power to strike at the heart of the prophecy itself. The claiming ceremony was about to begin, but they would not be the only ones participating in the night's supernatural events. The blood moon rose over the Olympic Mountains like a crimson eye opening in the darkness, its otherworldly light transforming the familiar forest into something primordial and magical. Luna stood at the cabin's main window, watching the lunar ascent while supernatural energy built in her bones like electricity before a storm. It's beginning, she murmured, her voice already carrying the deeper tones that marked her transformation's approach. Behind her, Kieran moved through the cabin lighting white candles arranged in protective patterns. The traditional claiming ceremony required flame and moonlight, silver and sacred space, two souls willing to bind themselves completely to each other's fate. Luna. His voice drew her attention back to the room. Are you ready? She turned to face him, her amber eyes already glowing with the blood moon's influence. Kieran had changed into simple black clothes that wouldn't restrict his movement during transformation, while Luna wore a white dress that honored the ceremony's ancient traditions. Between them, the space they prepared felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. I don't think anyone can be ready for this, Luna admitted, moving to the circle of candles they'd arranged in the cabin center. But I'm willing. That might be enough. Kieran took his position across from her, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on his face. The old texts say the ceremony responds to intention rather than preparation. Luna knelt within the circle, feeling the blood moon's power wash over her like warm tide. Her transformation began immediately, more complete than any shift she'd experienced outside of blood moon cycles. Her senses expanded dramatically, the cabin's familiar scents becoming a rich tapestry of information about the surrounding forest, the night air, and most importantly, about Kieran. His scent had deepened and intensified, carrying layers of meaning her enhanced perception could now decode. Attraction and determination, yes, but also fear and hope and something that might have been reverence. Her wolf stirred with satisfaction, recognizing his emotional state as perfect preparation for bonding. The ceremony has 3 phases, Luna said, her voice now carrying the otherworldly tones of her crimson-born nature. Recognition, vulnerability, and union. We've already completed recognition. And vulnerability means? Kieran asked, though his own transformation was beginning. His green eyes had darkened to forest depths, and the silver markings along his exposed arms were starting to glow with their own inner light. Complete emotional openness. No barriers, no defenses, no aspects of ourselves held back from the other. Luna felt her human consciousness beginning to merge with her wolf nature. It's the most dangerous part of the ceremony. If either of us holds back, or if we discover incompatibilities we can't accept, the bond fails, Kieran finished. Or worse. Or worse. They began with childhood memories, the foundation experiences that had shaped them into the people now kneeling in candlelight and moonbeams. Luna shared the terror of watching her parents die, the confusion of being raised by well-meaning pack members who saw her as a symbol rather than a child, the loneliness of growing up different from everyone around her. Kieran offered his own darkness, the slow realization that his family were monsters, the guilt of loving people who committed atrocities, the moment he'd chosen exile over complicity. His voice broke as he described the last conversation with his brother, Vincent's final words promising death if they ever met again. I dream about him sometimes, Kieran admitted, his transformation progressing as emotional barriers crumbled. About the brother he could have been if our father hadn't twisted him into a weapon. I dream about my parents, Luna replied, her own wolf nature rising to comfort his pain. About the life we could have had if your father hadn't decided our bloodline was a threat. The cruel irony wasn't lost on either of them. They were bonding over trauma created by their family's conflict, finding connection in the very wounds that should have kept them apart. As the blood moon reached its zenith, Luna felt her transformation complete itself. Her wolf consciousness emerged fully, bringing with it supernatural senses that could perceive emotions as clearly as sense, intentions as obviously as spoken words. When she looked at Kieran, she saw not just the man but the complex layers of his nature, shadow and light, violence and protection, isolation and desperate need for connection. Now I see you completely, she whispered, her voice carrying otherworldly harmonics. And I see you, Kieran replied, his own transformation revealing the massive wolf that lived beneath his human exterior. Every fear, every hope, every part of yourself you've hidden from the world. The vulnerability phase deepened, becoming an exchange of souls rather than simply minds. Luna showed him her terror of inadequacy, the constant fear that she wasn't worthy of her parents' legacy or her pack's devotion. Kieran revealed his bone-deep loneliness, 12 years of exile that had convinced him he was meant to be forever alone. What if we're not strong enough? Luna asked, voicing the doubt that lived at her core. What if the prophecy is wrong, and we can't actually save anyone? Then we failed together, Kieran answered, reaching across the circle to take her hands. But Luna, you're the strongest person I've ever met. If anyone can fulfill an ancient prophecy, it's you. Not me alone, she corrected, feeling the truth of it in her bones. Us together. Light and shadow, blood moon and silver moon, 2 halves of something that's been broken for too long. The union phase began without conscious decision, their supernatural natures reaching for each other across the space between them. Luna felt Kieran's consciousness touch hers, tentative at first, then with growing confidence as their mental barriers dissolved completely. The sensation was indescribable, like coming home to a place she'd never been, like finding a missing piece of herself she hadn't known was lost. Kieran's thoughts and emotions flowed into her mind, while hers expanded to encompass his. For a terrifying, exhilarating moment, Luna couldn't tell where she ended and he began. This is what unity feels like, she thought, and heard Kieran's mental voice respond. This is what we were meant to be. The mate bond snapped into place with an almost audible click, supernatural energy flowing between them like liquid starlight. Luna felt her individual consciousness stabilize within the connection, still herself, but now part of something larger and more powerful than either could achieve alone. Around them, the candle flames flared higher, responding to the supernatural energy their bond was generating. Through the cabin windows, Luna could see the blood moon's light intensifying, as if the lunar cycle itself was acknowledging their successful union. It worked, Kieran breathed, his eyes wide with wonder at the connection now flowing between them. It worked, Luna confirmed, but even as she spoke, she felt something wrong approaching from the darkness beyond their sanctuary. The attack came without warning. The cabin's protective wards exploded inward as supernatural forces struck from multiple directions simultaneously. Through the shattered windows came creatures Luna had never seen before, beings of shadow and malice with glowing red eyes and claws that dripped darkness like acid. Shadowkin, Kieran snarled, his protective instincts flaring as he moved to shield Luna from the attackers. "They've found us." Luna's newly enhanced senses cataloged the threats instantly, dozens of entities pouring through the breached defenses, their otherworldly essence making her wolf nature recoil in instinctive revulsion. These weren't ferals or rogues, but something far older and more dangerous. The bond, she realized with growing horror. They waited until we completed the bond to attack. Because now we're a threat to them. Kieran finished, his own transformation accelerating in response to the danger. Luna, the prophecy didn't just predict our bonding. It predicted that our bonding would threaten whatever is causing this supernatural crisis. The first Shadowkin reached their position, moving with inhuman speed and coordination that spoke of ancient intelligence. Luna felt the mate bond surge between her and Kieran, their combined power greater than the sum of their individual abilities. When she struck the creature, with supernatural fire drawn from the blood moon's energy, it shrieked and dissolved into smoking darkness. But for every Shadowkin they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "There are too many," Kieran said, his shadow-walking abilities allowing him to appear and disappear around the cabin as he fought to keep the creatures away from Luna. "Then we need to get out of here." Luna gathered supernatural energy from their bond, feeling power flow through her unlike anything she'd experienced before. "Can you shadow walk both of us?" "Not in this much moonlight," Kieran replied, appearing beside her to intercept another attacker. "But Luna, look at what you're doing." Luna followed his gaze and gasped. Her hands were wreathed in crimson fire that seemed to burn the Shadowkin on contact, while silver light emanated from her skin like armor. The bond had awakened abilities she'd never possessed before, powers that belonged to neither Crimson-born nor Shadow Walker bloodlines alone. "We're something new," she realized. "Something the enemy didn't plan for," Kieran agreed, his own abilities manifesting differently. The shadows around him moved with purpose now, forming defensive barriers and striking weapons that complemented Luna's fire and light. Together, they fought their way toward the cabin's rear exit, their bonded abilities creating a supernatural storm that held the Shadowkin at bay. But Luna could sense more enemies approaching through the forest. This was just the first wave of an assault designed to destroy them before they could fully explore their new powers. "The motorcycle," Kieran called over the sound of supernatural combat. "Can we reach it?" "We're about to find out." Luna gathered all the power flowing through their bond, channeling it into a blast of crimson fire that cleared a path through the attacking Shadowkin. Kieran wrapped shadows around them both, creating a protective barrier as they sprinted for the garage where his motorcycle waited. Behind them, the cabin began to burn with supernatural flames that would leave no trace for human investigators to find. Their sanctuary was lost, but their bond had survived its first test. As they roared down the mountain road with Shadowkin pursuing them through the darkness, Luna held tight to Kieran's waist and tried to process what had just happened. They'd successfully completed the claiming ceremony, awakened powers neither had possessed alone, and discovered that their bonding was so significant that ancient enemies were willing to risk everything to prevent it. "Where are we going?" she called over the motorcycle's engine. "Back to Seattle," Kieran replied. "If they're hunting us, our packs need to know." And Luna. What? Whatever we've become, whatever this bond has made us, I don't think the prophecy is finished with us yet. Luna felt the truth of his words in her bones as the blood moon followed them down the mountain, its crimson light seeming to whisper promises of greater challenges and greater powers yet to be revealed. The claiming ceremony was complete, but their real trials were just beginning. The Nightshade Tower's emergency bunker felt like a war room as Luna and Kieran arrived 3 hours after their escape from the cabin. Located 5 levels below the building's official basement, the reinforced space was designed to withstand supernatural attacks, nuclear strikes, and, according to pack legend, direct assault by angry gods. Marcus Ironwood looked up from a tactical display covered in red markers as they entered, his weathered face registering relief, alarm, and deep suspicion in rapid succession. "Luna, thank God you're safe." He moved toward her, then stopped abruptly as his enhanced senses cataloged the changes in her scent. "What happened to you?" "The claiming ceremony," Luna said simply, noting the way every pack member in the bunker went completely still. "Kieran and I completed the mate bond." The silence stretched for several heartbeats before Sarah Nightshade stepped forward, her negotiator's instincts clearly struggling to process this development. "You bonded with a Blackthorne," she said carefully. "I bonded with my mate," Luna corrected, her voice carrying new harmonics that spoke of the supernatural transformation she'd undergone. "The prophecy is real, Sarah. The Crimson-Born and the Shadow Walker. Our union was the key to awakening abilities that can fight whatever is causing the feral plague." Speaking of which, Kieran interjected, his own voice deeper and more commanding than before, "We were attacked immediately after completing the bond. Creatures called Shadowkin, beings I've never encountered in 12 years of hunting supernatural threats." Dr. Rebecca Chin stepped forward, her medical scanner already active. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward Luna. Luna nodded, standing still while the doctor ran her supernatural diagnostics. The readings made Rebecca's eyebrows rise dramatically. "Your supernatural signature has tripled in strength," she reported. "And the patterns are unlike anything in our medical database. You're registering abilities from at least 4 different bloodlines." 4. Luna exchanged a glance with Kieran. "How is that possible?" "The mate bond," Elder Ravencrest said, emerging from the bunker's deeper sections with an ancient book clutched in his weathered hands. "I've been researching the complete prophecy text since you left. The bond doesn't just unite 2 individuals. It unlocks the combined potential of both bloodlines plus dormant abilities that only manifest through perfect union." "What kind of dormant abilities?" Kieran asked, though Luna suspected he was already beginning to guess. "Elemental manipulation, dimensional perception, supernatural healing that extends to others, and—" Elder Ravencrest hesitated. "The ability to permanently cure feral transformation." Marcus turned sharply. "Cure ferals? That's impossible. Once a shifter loses their humanity." "Once a shifter loses their humanity under normal circumstances," Elder Ravencrest corrected. "But the prophecy suggests that a perfectly bonded Crimson-Born and Shadow Walker can restore the connection between human and wolf consciousness." Luna felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on her shoulders again. "How many ferals are we talking about?" "Current estimates put the number at over 300 across the Pacific Northwest," Dr. Chin reported. "And the rate of new transformations is accelerating. We're getting reports of entire pack territories going feral within hours." "Someone is definitely accelerating the timeline," Sarah added, consulting her tablet. "The Council of Elders emergency session last night was illuminating. 3 territorial alphas reported coordinated attacks on their pack boundaries. Not random feral incidents, but organized assaults using feral shifters as weapons." Kieran's expression darkened. "The Shadowkin are herding ferals into attack formations." "Luna, the cabin assault wasn't just about stopping our bond. It was about preventing us from interfering with a larger plan." "What larger plan?" Marcus demanded. "The complete collapse of supernatural civilization," Luna said quietly, the knowledge flowing through her bond with Kieran. "The Shadowkin aren't just causing feral transformations, they're building an army. And once they have enough ferals under their control, they'll reveal the supernatural world to humans in the most devastating way possible, Kieran finished. Mass casualties, uncontrolled violence, everything our people have worked centuries to prevent. Thomas Winwood, who had been monitoring communications from his position at the bunker's tactical station, looked up with an expression of grim concern. Luna, we're getting reports from pack territories across the region. The Silverback Pack in Oregon went completely dark 6 hours ago. The Moonstone Pack in Northern California is reporting feral attacks on their pack house. And what, Thomas? The Blackthorne Pack has issued a territory-wide hunt order. They're claiming Kieran murdered you and are mobilizing for full-scale war against the Nightshades. Luna felt Kieran's shock and pain through their bond, the betrayal cutting deeper than she'd expected. His family wasn't just disowning him. They were using his exile as justification for the very war he'd tried to prevent 20 years ago. Vincent, Kieran said quietly. My brother always said he'd finish what we started if he saw me again. He's using the current crisis as cover for territorial expansion, Sarah realized. Classic Blackthorne strategy, create chaos, then exploit it for political gain. Which means we're fighting a war on multiple fronts, Marcus summarized grimly. Shadowkin entities, feral armies, and now the Blackthorne Pack's territorial ambitions. Luna felt the supernatural power flowing through her bond with Kieran, abilities that could heal and protect and destroy in equal measure. But she also felt the crushing weight of expectations, her pack looking to her for salvation, the supernatural world depending on powers she barely understood, ancient prophecies demanding she become something more than human. I need some air, she said abruptly, heading for the bunker's exit. Luna, Marcus began. I'll be back, she called over her shoulder. I just need a few minutes to think. The elevator ride to the building's roof felt eternal, but finally Luna emerged into the Seattle night air. The blood moon was setting in the west, its crimson light fading to silver as dawn approached. From the Nightshade Tower's height, she could see the entire city spread below, millions of humans going about their lives, completely unaware that supernatural forces were aligning to destroy everything they knew. Overwhelming, isn't it? Luna turned to find Kieran behind her, his presence both comforting and adding to her emotional turmoil. How did you know I was up here? Mate bond, he said simply, moving to stand beside her at the roof's edge. I can feel your emotional state like it's my own. Right now, you're terrified that you're not strong enough for what's being asked of you. Are you reading my mind? I don't have to. It's exactly what I'm feeling too. Kieran's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as supernatural energy flowed between them. Luna, 12 hours ago, I was in exile with anger management issues. Now, apparently I'm half of a prophetic power couple destined to save the world. The adjustment period is significant. What if we can't do it? Luna voiced her deepest fear. What if the prophecy is wrong, or we're not strong enough, or we make a mistake that gets everyone killed? Then we fail spectacularly while trying our best, Kieran said, his voice steady despite the fear she could sense through their bond. But Luna, look at what we've already accomplished. We overcame 20 years of family hatred, completed a supernatural bonding that was supposed to be impossible, survived an attack by entities I didn't even know existed, and awakened abilities that make both our individual powers look like party tricks. When I put it like that, we're already beating the odds. Kieran turned to face her fully. The question isn't whether we're strong enough, it's whether we're brave enough to keep trying even when the stakes feel impossible. Luna studied his face, noting the way dawn light played across his features and highlighted the silver markings that had become more pronounced since their bonding. Through their connection, she could feel his determination, his willingness to face whatever came next as long as they faced it together. What's our next move? She asked. We start healing ferals, Kieran said. If we can prove the ability works, if we can show other packs that recovery is possible, it changes everything. Hope instead of despair, healing instead of destruction. And if the Blackthorne Pack tries to stop us? Kieran's expression hardened. Then they'll discover that their exiled son has found something worth fighting for. Luna felt her own resolve crystallizing as supernatural power flowed through their bond. They were facing impossible odds against ancient enemies, family betrayal, and the potential collapse of everything they'd sworn to protect. But they were facing it together, with abilities that shouldn't exist, and a love that had already defied every rational expectation. "Let's go save the world," she said. "Let's go save the world," Kieran agreed. As they headed back toward the elevator, neither noticed the figure watching from the shadows of a nearby building. Vincent Blackthorne lowered his binoculars, his face twisted with rage, and something that might have been grief for the brother he'd lost to enemy influence. "Soon, Kieran," he murmured to the morning air. "Soon you'll understand what betrayal really costs." Behind him, a dozen Blackthorne warriors awaited orders, their weapons gleaming silver in the dawn light. The war for the supernatural world's future was about to begin in earnest. The abandoned warehouse on Seattle's industrial waterfront reeked of fear and feral musk, but to Luna's enhanced senses, it smelled like hope. 3 former members of the destroyed Crescent Falls pack crouched in makeshift cages, their eyes wild with the mindless hunger that marked complete feral transformation. But if the prophecy was correct, they weren't lost forever. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Rebecca Chen asked, her medical equipment arranged around the warehouse space like a field hospital. "If the healing process goes wrong, then we learn from our mistakes and try again," Luna replied, her voice steady despite the nervous energy flowing through her bond with Kieran. "But Rebecca, these 3 are going to die from neural degradation within days if we don't try something." Luna approached the first cage, noting how the feral shifter inside, formerly Robert Crescent, a beta in his 40s with 2 young children, tracked her movement with predatory intensity. His human consciousness was completely submerged beneath savage wolf instincts, but she could sense something deeper, a spark of humanity buried under layers of supernatural corruption. "What do you need me to do?" Kieran asked, moving to flank her position. "Anchor me," Luna said, extending her hand toward his. "The healing process requires me to enter his mindscape, to find where his human and wolf consciousness became severed. But if I go too deep, I'll pull you back," Kieran promised, their fingers interlocking as supernatural energy began to flow between them. Luna closed her eyes, reaching for the abilities that had awakened through their mate bond. The power felt like liquid starlight in her veins, warm and electric and completely foreign to anything she'd experienced before. She extended her consciousness toward the feral shifter, seeking the connection that would allow her to access his damaged psyche. The moment of contact was jarring, like diving into a pool of acid and ice water simultaneously. Robert's mind was a chaos of hunger and rage, all higher thought consumed by the drive to hunt and kill and feed. But deeper, Luna sensed the echo of what he'd once been, a man who loved his family, who worked construction during the day and coached Little League on weekends, who'd never hurt anyone who didn't threaten his pack. Find the break, she told herself, navigating through layers of corruption toward the core of his being. Find where human and wolf were severed, and heal the connection. The damage was extensive. Whatever had caused Robert's feral transformation had burned through his neural pathways like supernatural napalm. But at the very center of his consciousness, Luna found it, a tiny spark of human awareness, imprisoned but not destroyed. She reached for it with power drawn from her bond with Kieran, feeling his strength flow through her as she began the delicate work of reconstruction. One connection at a time, one neural pathway restored, one memory of humanity returned to conscious access. "Robert," she called into the darkness of his mindscape. "Remember who you are. Remember your children's laughter. Remember building tree houses and teaching them to ride bikes. Remember choosing to be human." For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the spark began to grow. Luna felt the exact moment when Robert's human consciousness resurfaced, his wolf nature settling back into its proper relationship with higher thought. Through their bond, she sensed Kieran's amazement as the feral shifter in the cage suddenly stopped pacing, his wild eyes clearing as recognition returned. Where am I?" Robert's voice was hoarse from days of inhuman growling, but it was definitely human speech. What happened to my pack? My children, are they safe? Luna swayed as the healing connection ended, the power drain more significant than she'd expected. Kieran's arms came around her immediately, his supernatural strength supporting her weight as she processed what they'd just accomplished. It worked, Dr. Chin breathed, her medical scanners confirming what they could all see. His neural patterns are normalizing. Human consciousness is fully restored. But he's exhausted, Luna observed, noting how Robert had collapsed against the cage wall. The healing process is traumatic for both parties. How many can you heal in a day? Marcus asked. He'd insisted on observing the process, despite Luna's protests that pack leadership shouldn't risk exposure to experimental supernatural procedures. Maybe 3 or 4, if Kieran can help me manage the power drain. Luna accepted the energy drink Rebecca offered, her body craving sugar and caffeine after the supernatural workout. But Marcus, that's assuming no one tries to stop us. About that, Thomas Winwood said, entering the warehouse with a tactical tablet that displayed disturbing intelligence reports. We've got problems. Multiple problems. Define problems, Kieran said, his protective instincts flaring at the grim expression on the Master-at-Arms' face. The Blackthorne pack has mobilized for war. Vincent Blackthorne is personally leading a strike force of 30 warriors, all equipped with silver weapons and supernatural tracking equipment. Thomas consulted his tablet. They're calling it a rescue mission, claiming you've been brainwashed by Nightshade mind control techniques. Luna felt Kieran's pain spike through their bond, the betrayal cutting deeper than physical wounds. And the other problems? The Shadowkin attacks are accelerating. 6-pack territories have gone completely dark in the past 12 hours. No communications, no survivors found. Thomas's expression grew grimmer. And the Council of Elders has issued an emergency directive. All supernatural beings are to evacuate populated areas immediately. Evacuation. Luna looked up sharply. Why? Because, Thomas said quietly, the government knows. The silence in the warehouse was deafening. Luna felt the bottom drop out of her world as the implications hit her. If human authorities had discovered the existence of shifters, if the careful secrecy that had protected their people for centuries was compromised, how much do they know? Marcus asked, his alpha authority masking what Luna could sense was complete panic. Enough to mobilize military units with silver ammunition. Enough to issue containment orders for major population centers. Enough to... Thomas hesitated. Enough to declare martial law in Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver. The Shadowkin aren't just building a feral army. Luna realized, the terrible truth crystallizing in her mind. They're orchestrating complete exposure of the supernatural world under the worst possible circumstances. Mass panic, military intervention, supernatural beings forced to defend themselves with violence, Kieran added grimly. It's the perfect storm for a war that destroys both worlds. Robert Crescent stirred in his cage, his newly restored human consciousness struggling to process the conversation around him. My children, he said weakly. If there's going to be war, I have to find my children. Robert, your pack territory was overrun, Dr. Chin said gently. Your family was evacuated to the Spokane safe house with other survivors. Then I have to get to them. I have to protect them. The former feral tried to stand, his legs shaking with exhaustion but his determination clear. Luna made a decision that would change everything. You'll come with us, she said, moving to unlock his cage. All the ferals we heal, they'll become part of our force. People who've experienced the darkness and chosen to return to the light. Luna, Marcus warned, we don't have time to build an army. Vincent Blackthorne will be here within hours. The government is mobilizing against all supernatural beings, and we still have 2 more ferals to heal. Then we heal them quickly and move to a more secure location. Luna turned to face her pack family, drawing strength from Kieran's presence beside her. Marcus, I know this seems impossible, but the traditional ways of handling supernatural crises aren't working. We need something new. What are you proposing? Instead of hiding from the exposure, we control it. Instead of fighting the government, we work with them. Instead of treating ferals as lost causes, we heal them and give them purpose. Luna felt the supernatural power flowing through her bond with Kieran, abilities that could reshape the entire conflict if applied correctly. We show both worlds that cooperation is possible. That's incredibly dangerous, Sarah said, though Luna could hear the strategic possibilities in her sister's voice. If we miscalculate, if the government decides we're a threat rather than potential allies. If we don't try, millions of people die in a war between worlds, Kieran said firmly. At least this way, we're fighting for something better than mutual destruction. Thomas looked up from his tablet with urgent news. Decision time is over. Blackthorne forces have been spotted 3 miles out, and they're not alone. Military helicopters are converging on this location from the north. How did they find us? Luna demanded, even as she was moving toward the remaining caged ferals. Doesn't matter now, Kieran said, his shadow-walking abilities already manifesting as he prepared for combat. What matters is getting everyone out alive. Luna reached the second cage, where a young female shifter paced frantically. This had been Maria Santos, barely 19 when her pack fell to the feral plague. Luna didn't have time for the careful, gentle healing she'd used on Robert. She would have to work fast and hope the rushed process didn't cause permanent damage. Luna, we need to evacuate now, Marcus insisted, but she was already extending her consciousness toward the feral's damaged mind. The healing went faster this time, Luna's growing familiarity with the process allowing her to navigate directly to the severed connections. Maria's transformation back to human consciousness was violent, her body convulsing as supernatural energy restored neural pathways that had been burned away by whatever force had caused her feralization. What's happening to me? Maria gasped as awareness returned, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. You're being healed, Luna said quickly, already moving to the third cage. But we need to move. Can you walk? I think so. Maria accepted Robert's help standing, both former ferals leaning on each other for support. The third feral was the most challenging, an older alpha whose transformation had been so complete that Luna could barely sense any remaining humanity. As she reached for his consciousness, explosive sounds from outside the warehouse indicated that their time had run out entirely. Luna, we have to go. Kieran's voice carried urgent warning as silver bullets shattered windows around the warehouse's perimeter. Luna gritted her teeth, pouring more power than was safe into the healing process. She felt Kieran's strength flow through their bond, his supernatural abilities supplementing hers as she fought to restore the Alpha's severed consciousness. The process was brutal, like performing surgery with a sledgehammer, but it worked. The Alpha's eyes cleared just as the warehouse's main door exploded inward, admitting armed figures in tactical gear. But these weren't Blackthorne warriors. These were human soldiers, their equipment marking them as elite military units. Freeze. All supernatural entities remained motionless, with hands visible. The lead soldier's voice carried through tactical communications equipment, suggesting the humans had come prepared for beings with enhanced hearing. Luna felt the 3 healed ferals instinctively move closer to her and Kieran, their supernatural instincts recognizing pack leadership even in their weakened state. Around the warehouse, she could sense her own pack members taking defensive positions, while through the bond, she felt Kieran calculating shadow-walking routes that could get them out safely. We're not here to fight, Luna called out, raising her hands to show they were empty. These people need medical attention. Luna Nightshade, the lead soldier said, consulting a tablet that apparently contained detailed intelligence about her. You're wanted for questioning regarding terrorist activities in the Seattle metropolitan area. Terrorist activities? Luna felt a surge of indignation. We're healing people who were victims of supernatural attacks. Our intelligence indicates you're leading an organization responsible for multiple deaths and the creation of biological weapons. The soldier's tone was professional, but implacable. Surrender peacefully, and you'll be treated according to international law. Biological weapons? Dr. Chen stepped forward, her medical equipment still active around the 3 former ferals. Officer, I'm a licensed physician. These individuals were suffering from a neurological condition that we've successfully treated. My scans can prove. Ma'am, step away from the subjects and surrender your equipment. That's when the second wave of attackers arrived, and these definitely weren't human. Vincent Blackthorne came through the warehouse's rear entrance like a force of nature, his supernatural speed allowing him to cover the distance to Luna's position in seconds. Behind him, Blackthorne warriors spread out in tactical formation, their silver weapons gleaming under the warehouse's harsh lighting. "Hello, brother," Vincent said, his voice carrying 20 years of accumulated rage. "I told you what would happen if I saw you again." Kieran stepped protectively in front of Luna, his own transformation beginning as shadows gathered around his form. "Vincent, this doesn't have to. You murdered your mate and corrupted her pack into following your agenda," Vincent interrupted, his canine teeth extending as his own shift began. "The Blackthorne pack doesn't tolerate treachery." "I didn't murder anyone." Luna stepped out from behind Kieran, her amber eyes blazing with supernatural fire. "I'm very much alive, as you can see." Vincent's gaze fixed on her, and Luna saw the exact moment he registered the changes in her supernatural signature. His expression shifted from rage to something approaching horror. "What did he do to you?" Vincent whispered. You're not purely Nightshade anymore." "I'm bonded," Luna said simply. "Kieran and I completed the mate bond. We're working together to heal the feral plague." "Impossible." Vincent's voice cracked. "Blackthorne and Nightshade bloodlines can't bond. Our genetics are incompatible." "Apparently they're not," Luna replied, feeling the supernatural power flowing between her and Kieran. "Vincent, the feral plague is being caused by something called Shadowkin. They're ancient entities that feed on supernatural conflict. Every war between our packs, every territorial dispute, every act of violence, we've been feeding them for generations." "Lies," Vincent snarled, but Luna could see doubt creeping into his expression. "The humans are here because the Shadowkin want to expose the supernatural world through violence and chaos," Kieran added, trying to reach whatever remained of the brother he'd once known. "Vincent, we can prove what we're saying. The three people behind us were completely feral 12 hours ago. Luna healed them using abilities that only manifested through our bond." The military forces were growing restless, their tactical positions clearly designed to contain all supernatural beings regardless of their apparent alliances. Luna realized they had minutes at most before the situation escalated beyond any hope of peaceful resolution. "Demonstration," she said suddenly. "Vincent, one of your warriors. Someone who's been affected by feral symptoms but hasn't transformed completely yet." Vincent's expression flickered with something that might have been hope before hardening again. "Even if what you're saying is true, it doesn't change what Kieran did. He betrayed his blood family for enemies." "He saved my life when I was 8 years old," Luna said quietly. "Vincent, your father ordered my execution because he knew about the prophecy. He was trying to prevent the Crimson-born from ever awakening. Kieran chose to protect an innocent child instead of participating in genocide." The silence that followed was broken by the lead soldier's voice. "All parties have 30 seconds to surrender before we implement containment protocols." Luna felt the weight of impossible choice pressing down on her. Surrender to military forces who saw them as terrorist threats, fight a war against both humans and Blackthorne warriors that would prove the Shadowkin's point about supernatural violence, or somehow find a third option that didn't exist. That's when the real enemy revealed itself. The warehouse's lights flickered and went out, plunging the space into darkness that seemed somehow alive and malevolent. Luna's enhanced senses immediately detected the presence of multiple Shadowkin entities materializing around the building's perimeter. "Now do you believe us?" Kieran called to Vincent as red eyes began to glow in the darkness surrounding them. The attack came from all directions simultaneously, Shadowkin pouring through walls and shadows like living nightmares, their otherworldly presence making every supernatural being in the warehouse recoil in instinctive terror. The human soldiers opened fire, their silver ammunition proving completely ineffective against entities that existed partially outside normal reality. "Together," Luna shouted, reaching for Vincent even as supernatural fire blazed around her hands. Whatever our family's history, right now we're all on the same side. Vincent hesitated for one crucial moment, then nodded grimly. Blackthorn Pack, defensive formation around the humans. Protect the non-combatants. What followed was the most chaotic battle Luna had ever experienced. Shadowkin entities moved like liquid darkness, appearing and disappearing at will while striking with claws that seemed to drain life force on contact. The human soldiers, trained for conventional warfare, found themselves completely outmatched by supernatural enemies their weapons couldn't touch. But Luna and Kieran's bonded abilities proved devastatingly effective against the Shadowkin. Her crimson fire and his shadow manipulation created a combination that could actually destroy the entities permanently, while their shared power allowed them to coordinate attacks with inhuman precision. The ferals, Dr. Chen called out, pointing to where Robert, Maria, and the Alpha were instinctively moving to protect the human soldiers. They're fighting to defend others. Luna saw Vincent's expression change as he witnessed former ferals choosing to protect their enemies rather than flee or attack. The demonstration was more powerful than any words could have been. "My God," Vincent breathed. "You really can heal them." "We can heal all of them," Luna replied, ducking under a Shadowkin's claws while sending a blast of supernatural fire that reduced the creature to smoking nothing. "But only if we work together." The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When the last Shadowkin entity dissolved into nothingness, the warehouse was left in smoking ruins, but everyone inside was still alive. The lead soldier lowered his weapon, his professional training warring with the evidence of his own eyes. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to call this into my superiors." "Do that," Luna said, her voice carrying new authority born of combat and crisis. "But tell them this, the supernatural community isn't the enemy. We're fighting the same threat you are, and we're willing to work together to protect everyone." Vincent approached slowly, his brother standing between him and Luna. "Kieran, I owe you an apology." "You owe me nothing," Kieran replied. "But our people deserve better than the war father wanted." "The Blackthorn Pack will honor the bond," Vincent said formally, the ancient words carrying weight of tradition and law. "Kieran Blackthorne and Luna Nightshade are recognized as true mates, and their union is sanctified by blood and battle." Luna felt something tight in her chest finally release. The acceptance from Kieran's family wouldn't solve all their problems, but it removed one major obstacle to healing the supernatural world's divisions. "Now what?" Marcus asked, surveying the damage around them. "Now we save everyone," Luna said, feeling the power of her bond with Kieran flowing stronger than ever. "Humans, shifters, everyone who wants to build something better than endless war." Outside the ruined warehouse, dawn was breaking over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility. The real work of healing their divided world was just beginning, but for the first time since this crisis started, Luna believed they might actually succeed. The prophecy wasn't just about bonding light and shadow, it was about proving that love really could conquer all, even centuries of hatred and fear. The CDC containment facility in Spokane felt more like a prison than a medical center, its sterile white corridors lined with silver-reinforced barriers designed to hold supernatural beings indefinitely. Luna and Kieran sat in adjacent interrogation rooms, separated by walls that blocked their mate bond and left them both feeling incomplete and anxious. It had been 72 hours since the warehouse battle, 72 hours of questions from government officials who seemed more interested in classifying them as weapons than understanding the crisis they were trying to prevent. Through the small window in her cell door, Luna could see similar facilities housing dozens of other supernatural beings, pack members, rescued ferals, even some Blackthorn warriors who had chosen to stay and help rather than return to their traditional territory. The isolation was the worst part. Without Kieran's presence to anchor her, Luna's newly awakened abilities felt chaotic and unpredictable. She'd accidentally melted 2 sets of restraints and set fire to her bedding during nightmares about Shadowkin attacks. The facility staff now treated her with a mixture of fascination and terror that made her feel less human with each passing hour. "Miss Nightshade," The door opened to admit Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the government's lead researcher on supernatural biology. A tall woman with graying hair and intelligent eyes, she'd been more respectful than most of the officials Luna had encountered, but her agenda remained opaque. Doctor. Luna didn't look up from the book she'd been pretending to read. More questions about my transformation cycle? Blood samples? Theories about supernatural genetics? Actually, I wanted to discuss your partner. Dr. Mitchell settled into the chair across from Luna's narrow bed. Mr. Blackthorne isn't adapting well to containment. Luna's head snapped up, concern flooding through her despite the dampened bond. What's wrong? Is he hurt? Physically, he's fine. Emotionally, the separation from you is causing significant psychological distress. He's exhibiting symptoms consistent with severe anxiety disorder, plus some supernatural manifestations we've never documented before. Like what? Luna stood, pacing to the small window that looked out over the facility's exercise yard. Shadow phenomena. The darkness in his cell seems to move independently, responding to his emotional state. Yesterday, he somehow made his entire room disappear for 3 hours. We could see into empty space, but sensors confirmed he was still there. Luna felt a spike of worry that had nothing to do with the mate bond and everything to do with genuine care for Kieran's well-being. Doctor, separation trauma is real for bonded pairs. You're essentially torturing him by keeping us apart, which is why I'm here. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. The facility director is willing to allow limited contact between you and Mr. Blackthorne under controlled conditions. In exchange for what? Full cooperation with our research program, complete documentation of your abilities, detailed information about the entities you call Shadowkin, and... Dr. Mitchell hesitated. Demonstration of the feral healing process. Luna turned back to face the doctor. You have ferals here? 17 individuals recovered from various attack sites. They're in specialized containment, but their condition is deteriorating rapidly. Without intervention, we estimate they have less than a week before complete neural collapse. The thought of 17 people dying while she sat in isolation made Luna's wolf nature surge with protective fury. But she forced herself to think strategically rather than emotionally. What about the outside situation? The Shadowkin attacks, the military mobilization? Classified, Dr. Mitchell said automatically, then seemed to reconsider. Though I will say that supernatural incidents are escalating rapidly. We've documented attacks in 12 major metropolitan areas in the past week. And you're keeping the people who can actually fight these things locked up in medical facilities. Luna's voice carried an edge of supernatural authority that made the doctor shift uncomfortably. Dr. Mitchell, with respect, your superiors are making a catastrophic mistake. Help us understand the threat, and maybe we can change their minds. Luna considered the offer. Cooperation meant giving the government access to supernatural abilities that could be weaponized, but it also meant the chance to heal dying ferals and reunite with Kieran. Most importantly, it meant the possibility of getting back into the fight against the Shadowkin. I want to see Kieran first, she said finally. And I want your word that the ferals will receive immediate medical attention regardless of what else happens. Agreed. An hour later, Luna was escorted through the facility's secured corridors to a meeting room that looked more like a laboratory than a social space. Cameras and sensors lined the walls, while a team of researchers observed from behind one-way glass. But all of Luna's attention focused on the man sitting at the room's central table. Kieran looked terrible. His skin was pale, his green eyes shadowed with exhaustion, and she could see the tremor in his hands that suggested his supernatural abilities were destabilizing without their bond's anchor. But when he saw her, his entire posture straightened, and Luna felt their connection snap back into place like a rubber band that had been stretched to its breaking point. Luna. His voice carried relief, so profound it made her chest ache. Are you all right? She asked, moving quickly to the chair beside his. The moment their hands touched, supernatural energy flowed between them, restoring the balance that separation had disrupted. Better now. Kieran's fingers tightened around hers. God, Luna, I thought I was losing my mind. The shadows were responding to my emotions, and I couldn't control the manifestations without you to ground me. I know. I've been accidentally setting things on fire. Luna glanced toward the observation window, aware that every word was being recorded and analyzed. They want us to demonstrate the feral healing process. In exchange for getting out of here, getting back to the fight. Luna lowered her voice, though she was certain the surveillance equipment would pick up her words anyway. Kieran, the attacks are spreading. 12 cities in the past week.
His jaw tightened.
The Shadowkin are accelerating their timeline. They want to trigger complete exposure before we can organize an effective response. Then we need to get back out there. Luna looked directly at the observation window. Dr. Mitchell, I know you're listening. Bring us the ferals. All 17. We'll demonstrate the healing process, but then we need to discuss terms for our release. The intercom crackled to life. Miss Nightshade, the facility isn't equipped for that large a demonstration. We can bring 3 subjects initially. All 17. Luna interrupted, her voice carrying supernatural authority that made the windows vibrate slightly. Doctor, people are dying while we negotiate. The healing process works best when Kieran and I can establish a rhythm, when our combined abilities can flow naturally between subjects. The security risk is minimal compared to the risk of letting the Shadowkin continue building their feral army unopposed. Kieran's voice joined Luna's, their bonded presence creating a pressure in the room that made the air itself feel charged. Dr. Mitchell, you've seen what we can do working together. You've also seen what happens when we're separated. Which scenario serves your research goals better? A long pause, then. Bring all 17 subjects to Laboratory C, full medical monitoring, armed security, and emergency containment protocols on standby. Laboratory C turned out to be the facility's largest space, a converted gymnasium with medical equipment arranged around 17 specialized containment units. The ferals inside were in various stages of deterioration, some still maintaining partially human appearance, others so far gone they looked more like wild animals than people. Luna felt her heart break as she approached the first unit. Inside was a teenage girl, probably no older than 16, her eyes wild with feral hunger but her face still carrying traces of the person she'd once been. What's her name? Luna asked the supervising doctor. Designation FT-07. She was recovered from. Her name, Luna repeated, her voice dangerous quiet.
Emma.
Emma Rodriguez. Age 15, turned feral 6 days ago during an attack on her PAX community center. Luna placed her hand against the containment unit's barrier, feeling the supernatural corruption that had severed Emma's connection to her human consciousness. Through her bond with Kieran, she sensed his readiness to provide the anchor she needed for the healing process. Emma, Luna said softly, reaching out with abilities that still felt new and impossible. Can you hear me? Can you remember being human? The response was immediate, a flicker of awareness in the girl's wild eyes, a moment of recognition that cut through the feral hunger consuming her mind. The healing process was different with an audience of researchers and cameras documenting every moment. Luna felt self-conscious, aware that she was performing miracles for people who saw her as a specimen rather than a person. But as Emma's human consciousness surfaced, as her wild thrashing gave way to confused but rational speech, Luna saw the expressions of wonder and hope on the faces around her. It actually works, Dr. Mitchell breathed, her clinical detachment replaced by amazement. She's completely restored. And exhausted, Luna added, noting how Emma had collapsed against the side of her containment unit. The healing process is traumatic. She'll need time to recover, counseling to process what happened to her, and support from others who've undergone the same experience. How many more can you heal today? Asked the facility director, a stern man whose interest in Luna's abilities was clearly more tactical than humanitarian. Luna looked at the remaining 16 ferals, feeling the power flowing through her bond with Kieran. All of them, if you're willing to accept that this process can't be rushed or controlled. Each healing is unique, and some will be more difficult than others. Do it, the director said simply. What followed was the most intensive 6 hours of Luna's life. One by one, she reached into damaged minds and restored severed connections, guided lost souls back from the edge of permanent darkness. Kieran anchored her throughout, his strength flowing through their bond when her own energy flagged, his shadow abilities providing protection when the healing process triggered violent responses from the ferals. By the time they finished, 17 former ferals sat in medical observation, their human consciousness restored and their supernatural natures properly integrated. The research team was frantically documenting readings that defied everything they thought they knew about neurological damage and supernatural biology. "Remarkable," Dr. Mitchell said, approaching Luna as she slumped exhaustedly against Kieran's shoulder. "Miss Nightshade, what you've accomplished here could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself." "What I've accomplished here," Luna corrected wearily, "is saving 17 lives that were written off as lost causes. The question is what happens next." "Next," the facility director said, "we need to discuss how to scale this process. If you can train others to replicate your abilities." "I can't," Luna interrupted. "The healing requires the specific combination of Crimson-born and Shadow Walker abilities bonded through a completed mate connection. Kieran and I are apparently unique. Then we need to discuss terms for your continued cooperation." Luna exchanged a glance with Kieran, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. They were being offered a choice between comfortable captivity as government assets or a return to the chaos outside where Shadowkin entities were systematically destroying the supernatural world. "Our terms are simple," Kieran said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "Complete freedom of movement, access to intelligence about Shadowkin attacks, and government support for our efforts to organize supernatural human cooperation. In exchange for continued feral healing as needed, consultation on supernatural threats, and our word that we'll use our abilities to protect human populations as well as supernatural ones." Luna stood, drawing strength from their bond as she faced down the government officials who held their fate in their hands. "Dr. Mitchell, the choice isn't whether to work with us or control us. The choice is whether humanity and the supernatural world face this crisis together or separately." The director's expression was unreadable. "I'll need to consult with my superiors." "You have 12 hours, Luna said, feeling the urgency of time passing while Shadowkin forces grew stronger. "After that, Kieran and I leave with or without your cooperation." "That sounds like a threat. That sounds like a fact." Luna's amber eyes blazed with supernatural fire. "Director, your containment systems were designed for normal shifters. We're something new, something your predecessors never planned for. The question is whether we leave as allies or as adversaries." The silence stretched for several heartbeats before the director nodded slowly. 12 hours. "But Miss Nightshade." "Yes. The world outside these walls has changed dramatically in the past week. The supernatural exposure your people were trying to prevent? It's already happening. The question now isn't whether humans will learn about your kind, it's whether they'll see you as saviors or destroyers." As Luna and Kieran were escorted back to their cells, now adjacent rather than separated, Luna felt the weight of impossible responsibility settling on her shoulders once again. Tomorrow they would either walk free to continue their mission or break out and become fugitives from both human and supernatural authorities. But tonight, with Kieran's presence warm beside her and 17 former ferals sleeping peacefully in the medical wing, Luna allowed herself to hope that love and determination might actually be enough to heal a broken world. Outside the facility, Red Eyes watched from the shadows, counting down the hours until the final phase of an ancient plan could begin. The abandoned steel mill on the outskirts of Tacoma had become an unlikely headquarters for what was possibly the strangest alliance in supernatural history. Government officials sat alongside pack leaders. Former Blackthorne warriors shared intelligence with Nightshade strategists, and 17 newly healed ferals provided first-hand accounts of Shadowkin manipulation techniques. Luna stood before a massive tactical display, her enhanced senses processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. Red markers indicated confirmed Shadowkin activity, blue showed government response positions, and green marked supernatural communities that had successfully organized defensive measures. "The pattern is clear," she announced, her voice carrying across the cavernous space to the assembled representatives. "The Shadowkin aren't randomly attacking supernatural communities. They're systematically targeting specific bloodlines. Vincent Blackthorne leaned forward in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Which bloodlines? Ancient ones. Founding bloodlines that carry genetic memory of the original compact between supernatural beings and humans. Luna highlighted several locations on the map. The Silverback Pack in Oregon, descendants of the wolves who helped establish the Pacific Northwest's territorial boundaries. The Moonstone Pack in California, their bloodline includes the first shifters to work openly with human settlements. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, now officially assigned as the government's supernatural liaison, consulted her tablet. Are you suggesting these attacks are about more than creating chaos? They're about erasing knowledge, Kieran said, moving to stand beside Luna. The Shadowkin need the supernatural world to collapse completely, but they also need to ensure it can never rebuild. If they eliminate the bloodlines that carry historical knowledge about peaceful coexistence, future generations won't know cooperation is possible, Marcus Ironwood finished grimly. Brilliant and horrifying. Emma Rodriguez, the 15-year-old who had been among the first ferals Luna healed, raised her hand tentatively. I remember something from when they had control of my mind. They weren't just feeding on the feral energy, they were downloading something. Like they were copying information from our genetic memory. Luna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November weather outside. Emma, what kind of information? Pack histories, territorial agreements, the old treaties with human settlements. Emma's young face was pale but determined. They wanted to know everything about how our people used to live alongside humans. So they could prevent it from happening again, Dr. Mitchell realized. By eliminating both the knowledge and the bloodlines that carry it. Thomas Winwood stood from his position near the communications equipment. We've got incoming intelligence from Vancouver. The Canadian government has confirmed Shadowkin activity in 3 major metropolitan areas, all targeting supernatural communities with historical ties to peaceful human-shifter relations. How long before they achieve their objective? Asked Colonel James Harrison, the military officer assigned to coordinate supernatural human tactical operations. Luna consulted her own mental calculations, drawing on knowledge that seemed to flow through her bond with Kieran. Based on current attack patterns and elimination rates, 2 weeks, maybe less. Then we accelerate our own timeline, Vincent said, his transformation from enemy to ally still surprising everyone involved. Luna, how many ferals can you and Kieran heal in a day if we establish optimal conditions? Under ideal circumstances, with proper support and recovery time between healings, maybe 25. Luna felt exhaustion creep into her voice at the thought. But Vincent, there are over 800 confirmed ferals across North America alone. Then we train others to assist in the process, Dr. Mitchell suggested. If we can't replicate your exact abilities, perhaps we can create support systems that make the healing more efficient. Or, said a new voice from the entrance, we strike at the source. Everyone turned to see Elder Ravencrest enter the mill, his ancient eyes bright with purpose and his arms carrying a leather satchel that practically hummed with mystical energy. Elder, Luna said, relief flooding her voice. Thank God you're safe. We lost contact with the pack house 3 days ago. The pack house is secure, hidden behind protective barriers that will hold for another week. Elder Ravencrest approached the tactical display, his weathered hands removing an ornate compass from his satchel. But I didn't come here to report on our defenses. I came to share what I've learned about our enemies. The compass looked ancient, its brass surface covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move in the mill's industrial lighting. When Elder Ravencrest placed it on the tactical table, the needle spun wildly before pointing steadily northwest. What is that?
Colonel Harrison asked.
A Shadowkin detector, created by my predecessor during the last major incursion 80 years ago. Elder Ravencrest's expression was grim. It points toward the largest concentration of Shadowkin energy, which should indicate their primary stronghold. Luna studied the compass's direction, her enhanced senses picking up subtle vibrations from the device. Northwest, that's pointing toward the Olympic Peninsula. The deep wilderness areas, Kieran added, his own supernatural abilities resonating with the compass's energy. areas where humans rarely travel, where something could hide for decades without detection. Or centuries, Elder Ravencrest corrected quietly. Luna, the Shadowkin aren't invaders from another dimension. They're refugees from our own past. The silence in the mill was complete as everyone processed this revelation. Refugees from what?
Dr. Mitchell asked.
From the last time supernatural beings and humans nearly destroyed each other. Elder Ravencrest opened his satchel again, this time removing an ancient journal bound in what looked like human leather. This is the record kept by my great-grandfather during the crisis of 1847, the year the Shadowkin were supposedly banished forever. Luna accepted the journal, her enhanced vision easily reading the faded text despite its age. What she found made her stomach clench with horror and recognition. They're not parasitic entities, she realized, looking up at the assembled faces. They're corrupted supernatural beings. Shifters and others who were consumed by hatred and violence during the last Great War. Transformed by their own rage into creatures that feed on conflict, Kieran said, understanding dawning in his voice. That's why they want to eliminate peaceful bloodlines, not just to prevent cooperation, but because cooperation itself is toxic to their existence. Which means, Vincent said slowly, that every time we choose violence over diplomacy, every territorial dispute, every pack war, we've been feeding them, making them stronger. Elder Ravencrest nodded sadly. For over a century and a half, supernatural communities have unknowingly sustained the very entities that seek our destruction. Every act of aggression, every moment of hatred between our people and humans, it all flows back to them. Emma Rodriguez spoke up again, her young voice carrying wisdom beyond her years. When I was feral, when they controlled my mind, I could feel their hunger. But it wasn't just for violence, it was for belonging. They want to come home, but they can't remember how to be anything other than monsters. Luna felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place, a solution forming that was both impossible and inevitable. We don't fight them, she said quietly. We heal them. Luna, Marcus warned, we're talking about entities that have spent over a century feeding on hatred and violence. The healing process that works on ferals would be infinitely more dangerous with Shadowkin, yes. Luna looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. But Elder Ravencrest just told us that they're not alien entities, they're our people. Corrupted, transformed, lost, but still fundamentally supernatural beings with the capacity for redemption. That's an enormous risk, Colonel Harrison said. If the healing process fails, if you're corrupted in the attempt, then we fail trying to save everyone instead of just protecting ourselves, Kieran said, moving to stand beside Luna. Colonel, the alternative is a war that destroys both worlds. At least this way, we're fighting for something better. Dr. Mitchell looked up from her tablet, where she'd been running calculations. The energy requirements alone would be staggering. Luna, your feral healings exhaust you completely, and those subjects retained some connection to their human consciousness. If the Shadowkin have been corrupted for over a century, then we'll need help, Luna said, her strategic mind already working through the logistics. Not just from supernatural communities, but from humans. The compact that originally created peaceful coexistence. Maybe that's the key to healing the corruption that's destroying it. You're talking about rebuilding the original supernatural-human alliance, Elder Ravencrest said thoughtfully. Not just cooperation born of crisis, but genuine partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. Is that even possible in the modern world? Vincent asked. Luna looked around the mill, noting the mix of species, factions, and former enemies all working together toward a common goal. A week ago, I would have said no. But look at us, government officials sharing intelligence with pack leaders, Blackthorne and Nightshade warriors fighting side by side, humans and shifters united against a common threat. And 17 people who were written off as lost causes now contributing their experiences to help save others, Emma added, her voice growing stronger with conviction. It's possible, Luna continued, feeling certainty crystallize in her mind. But it means taking the biggest risk any of us have ever contemplated. It means trusting that love and understanding are stronger than centuries of hatred and fear. Elder Ravencrest smiled, the expression transforming his weathered features. My dear, you've just described the original prophecy in its complete form. The Crimson-Born and the Shadow Walker shall unite not just as mates, but as symbols of redemption itself. Through their bond, the ancient wounds shall heal, and the lost shall find their way home. Luna felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders, but for the first time since this crisis began, it didn't feel crushing. It felt like purpose. Then let's go heal some monsters, she said. Around the mill, former enemies and newfound allies began planning the most audacious rescue mission in supernatural history, not to defeat the Shadowkin, but to save them. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the Olympic Peninsula, as if the universe itself was preparing for the final confrontation between love and hatred, hope and despair, redemption and damnation. The real test of the prophecy was about to